next generation of warfare, psychological warfare. In modern conflict, the mind is a potent weapon. Discover General Michael T. Flynn's groundbreaking guide, The Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. Unlock tactics, strategies, and the mindset to navigate this cognitive battlefield that we all find ourselves in. Equip yourself against manipulation and emerge unscathed. Unleash your potential. Order now.
Everyone's gone.
Oh, how embarrassing. Oh, we slept right through church.
It's not the end of the world.
Oh, no, it's the apocalypse. What? Are you wearing clean underwear?
Not anymore. It's the rapture, and I never knew true love.
I never used those pizza coupons.
Why aren't we ascending into heaven? Oh, right. The sins.
Oh.
Where do you think you're going, Missy?
Dad!
Ooh, I smell barbecue. Hey, look. Ah! Oh, they're on a hot dog! And the coleslaw has pineapple in it! Ah!
Step aside, ladies. I'm bringing the peace. I am so staying up past my bedtime.
German potato salad!
I'm on a highway to hell. On the highway to hell. Highway to hell. I'm on the highway to hell. No stop signs, speed limit. Nobody's gonna slow me down. Like a wheel, gonna spin it. Nobody's gonna mess me around. Hey, station, pay my dues. Playing in a rocking band. Hey, mama, look at me.
It's like,
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Alpha Warriors Show. I'm your host, Alpha. Tonight, I got my co-host, Josh Reid, redpills.tv, also known as the Walking Human Encyclopedia. It is Sunday night. We are live. Man, I miss doing it this way. Wanted to start off with some humor. I promise we're going to end on some humor, but I know in between all of that, there's a lot of stuff we're going to talk about. Listen, if you're a normie, stand by to stand by. If you're an advanced red pillar, I guarantee you're still going to learn some stuff from Josh and everything in between. All I ask you guys is soften your hearts, open your ears, battle that cognitive dissonance, and we're going to talk about tomorrow, man. We're about, what, T-minus 18 hours?
yeah. Yeah, let's get ready, man. Like we just we actually had a little while ago a prayer and meditation group meeting and just kind of meditated and prayed on the eclipse tomorrow, and really just kind of an intentional thing. And prayer, meditation, I look at them very much as the same thing, but it's good to just kind of get your mind clear before these things, because there's a lot of hype being drawn up. I mean, the newest one that I'm seeing right now, this is, do you remember last week when people were posting like, oh, NASA has canceled the solar eclipse? Like, do you remember this? Like, people are like, you don't cancel a solar. So a JPL lab, Jet Propulsion Laboratory Lab, had a whole event that was going to go on, but they're going to have clouds and all this stuff. So they canceled the event, and a whole bunch of people are like, NASA canceled the solar eclipse. Well, now we're hearing that the path of the solar eclipse is going to change. So you have all these people flocking to these areas, right? All like to all this area. And apparently now they're saying, well, the solar eclipse, the path has actually changed. It's deviated. Dude, that doesn't happen. This is like mathematical precision. Like the sun and the moon, like, no, it doesn't work that way. So
I was about to say, like, I mean, we have the science and the math down to where, quote unquote, bring shuttles back to Earth. Like we know to like the quarter inch where that thing's going to land. And all of a sudden the big ass moon and the even bigger sun, somebody was wrong on a number. Like, come on.
Yeah. Thousands upon thousands of people, probably hundreds of thousands of people around the world who calculated that path. Oh, my bad. We were wrong on that. Let's just recalculate that because all these people are flocking to all these towns. Oh, by the way, guys, you're in the wrong spot. You need to go about 100 miles. I don't know. It's kind of odd. This is the craziest. So, and guys, there's a lot of hoopla out there. Understand that. There's significance. There's mythology. There's other types of spiritual things that we can talk about tonight, that we will talk about tonight. But in the sense of the fear mongering and propaganda, Alpha, this is interesting. The old text and the Mayans and the Aztecs and the ancient Chinese and the Mesopotamians, they all had this bad omen aspect of solar eclipses. What's interesting about that is, if you remember probably hearing the stories from high school of the priest of that time, the priest caste, what they would do is they would, every so often the people would deviate from religion and spirituality, wouldn't listen to the priest class anymore. So the priest class would go out there and tell the kings or tell the rulers and tell the people, God has ordained me, entitled me with information and knowledge to lead these people. If you don't believe me, he's going to give you a sign in the heaven tomorrow where the whole earth will turn dark. And that's because they were able to calculate this, but they would utilize it in the process of fear and propaganda. And it's interesting that the priest class and the ruling class have not changed one bit in thousands and thousands of years, because last week in January, people can go to my Twitter and see this. I said that we're going to have a major global event between April 6th and April 16th. What I meant is not the eclipse. I meant like there's going to be some type of event, whether Iran attacking Israel, a terrorist attack in the United States, something like that. And the reason we knew this is because in September, I made the same prediction. I said that, hey, between September 22nd and October 17th, we're going to see a major event globally. And that happened on October 7th when Hamas went into Israel. Now, interesting enough is that Hamas went into Israel the day before the lunar eclipse. Okay. And this actually was about a week and a half after a small meteorite or asteroid named Eris, which in mythology is the goddess of chaos, who started the Trojan Wars, entered into the north node of the moon. So we knew that chaos was going to ensue. In December, when the Iranians hit the U.S. embassy and everybody's like, the U.S. is like, we're going to retaliate on and around, right? I said it's going to happen on Friday by 4 p.m. It happened Friday at 6 p.m. I was off by 2 hours. And the reason I knew that is because the full moon was rising at that time. So these people, they plan events in accordance to astrological events. And so when I say that April 6th to April 16th, this is the time frame of this solar eclipse and a few other events that are occurring at that time, one being Devil's Comet and another being a star which is being consumed by a black hole that appears every 61 years for only 3 days, and it's going to be appearing as a magnitude 10 star in the sky in and around this time. So massive solar astrological significance. And so it's interesting to watch this, because the fear propaganda now, after the last few days, is imminent terrorist threat in the United States of America. Watch for lone wolf terrorist attacks in the United States. We have Iran saying we're going to attack. Alpha, being former military, when do you ever go out there in the mainstream media and go, okay, guys, we're going to attack this country in and around this time, and it's going to be bad. We're going to do it.
Never, bro.
The only people who do that are the C right? Like it's that type of stuff. Like when they said that there was going to be a terrorist attack in Russia, we warned Moscow, and a week later, the terrorist attack comes, and it's blamed on ISIS we haven't heard of in like 10 years. And then you find that 40 Turkish ISIS members are arrested, and one of the main ones has a direct financial connection to the CIA. I mean, it's just like, come on, people. We got to wake up to what's really happening here. We are dealing with dark occultists who understand the movement of the stars in the heavens better than most of us do. And they utilize them against me and you. But that all changes.
100%. Well, first of all, I thought I was up to speed on everything that was going to pop off tomorrow. And then you drop this, there's a planet going to be sucked up by a black hole.
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn it. I got to add another thing to the list. So far, this is where I'm at. And I'm sure we will address all these things. I know you got some stuff lined up. I got some screenshots, some different things that we can bring up. We'll cover everything. But right now we have, I think we're up to almost 20 different states that have, declared a state of emergency. We have the Army National Guard in Oklahoma, Ohio, and some other ones that have activated their troops. But the thing that caught everybody's attention, it's their bioweapons and nuclear units.
Right.
And they're like, well, they're the help to state troopers and cops. And it's like, so why don't you do the regular ones? Why are you adding fuel to the fire? So we got that going on. We have NASA that's launching 3 rockets. I know you're going to talk about that. I can't wait for people to hear what you got to say on this. We have a Devil's Comet we'll be talking about. I mean, there's just all these things that are supposed to, take place tomorrow. So I want to make sure we cover the facts, and then I want to make sure that we also cover the theories and speculation. But I want to put something out there for you right now and for the audience. I want everybody to kind of think what you think right now, and then at the end of the show, we'll see if it's going to change. So I want people to start thinking: do you think tomorrow is going to be the rapture, biblical end of times? Do you think it's going to be B, Independence Day? We're going to have aliens. C, do you think that this is a cover up? That the eclipse is really an asteroid that's coming and it's going to get in the way of the sun. We're going to have an Armageddon. We don't got Bruce Willis to save us. Do we think it's going to be for CERN? D, CERN's opening up a portal. And we're going to have all the doom demons come out. Or zombies. You can just throw zombies in there because zombies are always fun. Or is this going to be a Y2K dud? And we're all just going to be like, well, at least we got perishables and stuff like that for the next thing. So kind of, put it in the chat, put it in the comments, let us know where you think. And at the end of the show, I got some cool things to bring up on the screen. And we'll see if your mind hasn't changed since then. So with that, where do you want to start at, Josh?
Well, let's start with understanding kind of the mindset. So for everybody out there, I've studied the occult for 25, 30 years, esoteric mysteries, however you want to look at it. Deeply ingrained in this stuff a lot of my life. And people are like, oh, you're evil. No, it's nothing evil. It's just, it's understanding knowledge and information. And I consume knowledge and information. And I love it. And I thrive off of it. But one of my, my things I've done more recently is looked into like the dark occult. Who are the dark occultists? And this is what we would call the black hats, if you want to look at it in the white hat, black hat type of arena. But one thing to understand is that the reality we live in, the universe, the galaxy, the solar system, the planet, are all dominated by cycles of time. These cycles of time very rarely overlap. Now, there's various different cycles I can bring up right now. One of them is being the precessional cycle. We know we're moving out of the age of Pisces, entering in the age of Aquarius. There is the solar cycle, 11.25 years. We have a solar cycle. Every 121 years, we have a super solar cycle, kind of like a Carrington type of event where you have massive super flares that could hit the planet and produce massive electromagnetic interferences. We have the fourth turning. If anybody hasn't read Howe and Strauss's book, Generations or the Fourth Turning, I highly recommend it. These are two Columbia University history professors who studied 500 years of history from the end of the Roman Empire to current. And what they found is that psychologically in culture, we have cycles that we go through. We go through these renaissances, these golden ages, into kind of a swooping down into chaos, into massive collapse. And the massive collapse is called the fourth turning. And that's currently where we are at right now if we look at these 72 to 90 year cycles. So there's those cycles. Then we also have this other kind of aspect, is we have the Julian calendar versus the Gregorian calendar. And everybody knows that the first of the year is actually in Aries or April. It is not January. That was changed, 1,700 years ago to conform to various pagan celebration systems to convert a lot of paganism in the Roman Empire into modern day Christianity. And so the Gregorian calendar looked at things in the sense starting on April 1st. Now, in various different traditions, spiritual traditions, the first 5 days or 7 days, depending on which tradition you looked at, were looked at as the days of creation or the days of blasphemy. In Greek, this was looked as days of mourning, of days of massive trauma, to where they wouldn't work or they wouldn't do anything for 5 days. This is also looked at in the sense of the 7 days of creation, the first 7 days of the year or the first 7 days of creation. This gets important when we start understanding why tomorrow is kind of significant in all of this. By the way, the whole 5 days in the Greek aspect goes back to the 360-day calendar system. We have 365.25 days. So to complete a full circle, 360 degrees, 360 days, they cast out the first 5 days of the year. They would party. This is where we get our New Year's celebrations and all these things from. But going into this, in the sense is if we looked at the beginning of the year, April 1st, April 7th, these are the first days of creation. Makes sense. The seventh day ends on Sunday. Saturday's the Sabbath. And then Monday, Moon Day, kind of interesting. Monday, Moon Day, is the 8th day. In various different mythological contexts, 8 means beyond God, or that which creates a bridge between the human world and the spiritual world. If you remember Travis Scott and the concert he had, and he had Ball and Baphomet and all these people there, and he had the figure 8 symbology, the infinity symbology. He was wearing the Pearl Jam shirt. The number 8 was everywhere. Facebook's Meta is a symbol of an 8. So this is representative of this exact thing, bridging the physical and the spiritual worlds. So interesting enough, the solar eclipse tomorrow happens on the 8th, which is the 8th day of the beginning of the year, which is the day after the 7 days of creation, if we look at that in that context. Now, you might be like, that's just coincidence, Josh, right, to the audience. But to the dark occultist, that is significant, incredibly significant.
I need everybody to get that word coincidence, pull it out, crumble it, and launch it. That goes right in the book with conspiracy theory and all that other stuff. I want to bring something up because you mentioned this is one of the things that I found earlier when I was going through all this over the last few days. There's a Bible verse that people keep referencing. It's Urza, chapter 7, verse 9. This is from the King James version, and it says, "For upon the first day of the first month began he to go up from Babylon, and on the first day of the 5th month came he to Jerusalem, according to the good hand of his God upon him." Now, when you go and you do the translations of this, that first day that they're talking about, the start that's April, and it's the 8th. And when he says that he comes back, the 5th month later, that's August. I know people are like, well, August is the 8th month. That's a whole nother conversation. I don't know if Josh, you could do the quick version of that.
That's interesting because number one is we have the star. So there's a star in the sky that's going to become visible at a magnitude 10, which is very bright. And this is supposed to happen over the next few days. And it only stays in the sky for 3 to 4 days. And I believe it happens so there's 2 of them. One happens every 61 years, another every 91 years. The one that happens is going to happen. This is being consumed by a black hole. It's coming into view. It's going to be bright for a few days. But what's interesting is that there's a micronova that's going to appear in the sky late August, early September. And it's going to be exactly around the same spot and same brightness in the sky for about 3 days. So that's kind of interesting that you said that. But I always looked at prophecy in scripture as telling us something, as not a foreboding or a warning, but hey, look, you will understand when these cycles are coming to completion, because Luke 21:25, and there will be signs in sun and moon and stars, and on the earth distress of nations and perplexity because of the roaring of the seas and the waves, right? We're being told to understand how these cycles operate. Now, there's something very interesting about all of this. Now, going on to the biblical context, have we been persecuted? Have conservatives, MAGA, white cis males been persecuted over the last 7 years? Roughly about 2017, the current day. That's 7 years. What does it say in the Bible about 7 years of tribulations? I mean, when we start to look at these types of things, it starts to make a lot of sense that what's happening right now isn't necessarily because of a decline of society, but maybe because the world we live in, the universe we live in, has cycles, and these cycles have things out there that are influencing us that we maybe don't understand totally. And there's something known as the Great Year, and this is a processional cycle. And so, for everybody out there who doesn't know what a procession is that if you take a top and you spin it on your desk, it's going to spin in one direction, but you're going to watch a wobble in the opposite direction. Now, this typically happens when you have 2 points of gravitation which tug on that object that produce that backwards wobble. Our planet, as it goes around the sun, and yes, the planet is a spheroid, goes around the sun, it does this same wobble. And that wobble goes through 1 degree every 72 years, which is kind of interesting because 72 is the lifespan of the average human being. 72 is kind of also the same span of time for the fourth turning, right? But it goes through this. Now, every 2,160 years, it goes through an astrological or a precessional age. This is the age of Aries or Taurus or Pisces or Aquarius in the constellations. We have something when we look up at the sky called the ecliptic, that we rotate within the ecliptic, and that the sun will wobble through 1 degree of that constellation every year. 2,160 years it transits over. There's actually stories in the Bible that talk about this. When Moses comes down from the mountain with the 10 commandments, he sees the Israelites worshiping a false deity, a false idol, right? The golden bull. Moses is representative of the ram, the ram's horn, okay? So he has God strike the Israelites dead, the women and the children, kills them for worshiping the golden bull. The golden bull is Taurus. In processional cycles, you go backwards. Okay, you don't go forward in the constellations, you go backwards. So it would be Taurus. Next comes Aries, Moses. After Aries is Pisces. Pisces is Jesus, the fish, right? So there's an astrological context to this transition of the ages. We're now moving into the age of Aquarius.
Let me bring something up on the screen because, well, I'm going to bring up 2 things. One, to kind of go back a little bit for those that, miss the part where you're saying there's these patterns, or these cycles. And I found, so let me bring up this first one. And then the next one's actually on the age of Aquarius. So on this one right here, it talks about the dates, the numbers between the last time that we had the eclipse, that was on August 21st of 2017, and then tomorrow's date of April the 8th, 2024. And do the math. It's on the screen for you guys, but it's 6 years, 6 months, 6 weeks, and 6 days to the day. And then the graphics here, if anybody wants to take a screenshot of it, so you can read it later. So you have that. And then this is the part that I wanted to bring up where you have 7 planets that are going to be lining up. And from what I gather from this video that I was watching, because of the age of Aquarius, and it says that 7 other planets in our solar system will form a line as the path of the Great American Eclipse of 2024 crosses America. And like I said, I'll leave it up there for a quick few seconds so you guys can take a screenshot of that as well. Is this kind of where you're talking about where we're coming into right now?
Yeah, I mean, well, and you saw Niva in there. So Niva was a city that was destroyed. In the last solar eclipse, they went over Babylon, all these different towns called Babylon. And if you look at those 2 paths and how they cross, and you look at them in totality, because you actually have a circle, it produces LF, which is the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet. Right, there you go, LF to Tav, exactly. So there is significance in this. Now, what does it all mean, right? Is it biblical, and is Jesus going to be riding down on a cloud and the rapture is going to begin? Or was our ancestors who wrote scripture, our ancestors who wrote mythology? Because it's not just Christianity to where we see these things, right? This goes back thousands upon thousands of years, 8,000 years in the Maratha Bharata. This goes back to Sumerian mythology and lore, right? They talk about all of these things. They talk about the same signs and symbols. So maybe they're trying to translate something to us. And one of the things that I believe they were trying to translate to us was that consciousness, our minds, our spirituality goes through different cycles. Just like the cycles of nature. We go through 4 seasons in the Northern Hemisphere, right? We go through winter, we go through spring, we go through summer, we go through fall. And we go through these various different cycles, and so does our planet as it rotates around the sun, and so does our sun as it rotates around the galaxy. There's all these cycles, but they're all correlated. Is that one large cycle you can see in the macrocosm, you can see in the microcosm. And so when we look at that, we start to understand that maybe there is a rebirth of consciousness, and consciousness begins to evolve and expand and grow. And this is what a lot of our ancestors in various different religious philosophies believed, is that our transit through the galaxy produced a point of evolution. Now, the key there is, well, when does it start? Like, how do we know where we're at? Like, right? So there's something I want to show everybody here. And if they're on the red, if they're like the red pillars, they'll know this, because I talk about this a lot. But there's something out there known as an analemma. Okay, not many people know what an analemma is. To give you an idea what an analemma is, if I can go ahead and just share screen real quick, share screen. Let me bring this up. There we go. If you looked at the sun from a fixed point on Earth at a time, same time every day, and you watched it throughout the year, it's going to form this pattern in the sky. Okay? This pattern is called an analemma. Now, interesting enough, what number does it look like?
The 8.
It's an infinity symbol. It's the number 8. And it's the grand cycle. The moon does the same thing over a 28-day period over the Earth, but it's very, very elongated. Okay? Now, what's interesting about this is that top part is summer, that bottom part is winter, and that middle part is the equinoxes. Equinoxes meaning equal, right? And so we see a cycle being formed. Now, if you watched our solar system outside of the galaxy, it would do the same thing through the galaxy. And the reason is because a few years ago, they discovered something known as Radcliffe waves in cosmology. And what happens is stellar nurseries, so think about the galaxy, right? You have the galactic arms that kind of spiral out. And what you have is these waves of stellar nurseries that do a sine wave up and down the galactic arm, okay? And as the stars form, that wave kind of increases in frequency, okay? So our solar system, our star, is moving up and down the galactic arm in a Radcliffe wave, which means that it takes us on that ride. Now, if we look at it from a scientific point of view, that Orion arm of the galaxy that we're in, towards the edges, you're going to have different polarities. You're going to have a positive and a negative polarity, because we know there is ionization charge within our galaxy. You're going to have different densities of gravity, as in gravity is going to affect things in the middle of the arm of the galaxy way more than it is at the edges. There's going to be less gravity at the edges, more than center, which means that you're going to have higher concentrations, densities of galactic cosmic particles towards the center. So this means that when we transit, our sun transits the galactic arm, it's moving through low density to high density, negative polarization to positive polarization of cosmic bombardment. Now, we know this, that if we look back in the past, we can see how this affects our sun. Is that cosmic ray bombardment increases the electrical potensity of our sun. This is why we go through solar cycles. This is why we go through solar maximums and super solar maximums. and it increases the electrical potential of our sun. Now, did you know that there are magnetic tunnels that connect the Earth and the sun?
I did not know that.
Isn't that crazy? Like there's these tunnels, magnetic tunnels like vortices that connect each planet to the sun. Now, imagine for a moment that the sun and the Earth, through electrical communications, maybe communicated. That means that whenever the sun was about to give off a massive solar flare, the Earth could be notified in advance. And the Earth, being kind of a hydraulic structure at its core to produce a magnetic field, could shift or adjust just slightly by producing a volcanic eruption or an earthquake to increase its magnetic field in the exact area to where that cosmic ray bombardment or solar ray bombardment was going to happen.
Which we see happening.
Which I've been calling out for 10 years now. I've been saying that, hey, look, we're going to have we just had an earthquake. Watch out. Here comes a solar flare. A week later, boom, there's a solar flare. And it's most likely from these magnetic tunnels that line of communication happens, because what happens is the sun gets hit with cosmic rays. It increases its electrical potentiality, increases the magnetic tunneling between the Earth. The Earth sees that fluctuation in magnetic field, begins to adjust its electromagnetic field to compensate for potentially a solar flare from the sun. It makes complete sense when you look at it from a scientific perspective. But now, as we move through higher densities of cosmic radiation, that sun's electrical potential is going to increase massively. Well, what does that do to this planet? It changes and fluctuates the ionosphere. It changes the Schumann resonance, increasing the alpha brainwave state of the majority of the species on this planet. And what does it do? It increases evolution. There's two 2014 studies that actually validate what I'm talking about here. One was done by a guy by the name of Dr. Martin Blank at Columbia University, another Columbia University. And he was actually looking at how 4G and 5G cell phone radiation affected DNA. And what he discovered blew his mind and led into this other study. What he found out is that DNA is absolutely susceptible to electromagnetic radiation, that cell phone radiation affects DNA and does damage it. But he found this out because DNA is an electromagnetic transducer, which means that it sends and receives electromagnetic signals. Your DNA sends and receives electromagnetic signals in the microwave range. I mean, for anybody out there hearing that, you're like, what? Yeah, approximately about 34.5 gigahertz. Your DNA is picking up and sending signals. Not only that, it's holofractic in its nature. You can cut it in half and it's still going to do the same thing. It's just going to do it in a little degraded amount. So he discovered this. Then there was another study that came out right after this. And we have something that the Big Bang theorists, they call the cosmic microwave background radiation, the CMBR, right? If you ever turn on an old analog radio and you go, the snow on the TV, that's actually what they call the afterglow of the Big Bang, the CMBR, the cosmic microwave background radiation. Now, microwaves is 3 to 300 gigahertz. On our planet surface level, that tops out about 28 to 35 gigahertz. Interesting. That's the same as our DNA. So this theory came out, peer-reviewed, and stated that what if the cosmic microwave background radiation had an influence over the DNA, help the DNA mutate and evolve into who we are today? And they're spot on right. Now, our DNA is actually encased in water, which is kind of interesting. Now, we know from the work of Dr. Emoto, or the work of Dr. Luc Montagnier, who just recently passed away, Nobel laureate, 2014, they found out that water holds structure, and that structure holds information. It's not necessarily the water, it's that the information holds structure in our universe, and that water will tend to move into that structure. And so when we start looking at all of these different dynamics, we see that an increased amount of electrical potential has a profound effect on our DNA and opening and evolving our DNA. So our ancestors knew this. And what they did is they timed these various different cycles. Now, one of the interesting things that I find, Alpha, is that the Mayan calendar in 2012, you remember how everything went to zero and they said it's the end of time, it's time. Yep. The Mayans were way smarter than us. It wasn't the end of time or the end of the world. It was the resetting of the calendar. If you can imagine 88 various different cycles occurring all at the same time, the probability of all those cycles ending all at zero at the same time is astronomical. Once in a billion years, something like that happens. It just happened. The fourth turning cycle, the super solar cycle, the precessional cycle, all of these cycles all occurring at the same time, resetting at the same time is happening right now within this 20-year period. We're going through it right now. And what that means is that we're taking that turn, and our ancestors, they knew this. We're taking that turn and moving back up into that higher density range of that galactic arm, which is going to have profound effects on us, our body, but also on our planet in the sense of various different cataclysms, as Randall Carlson has talked about and stuff like that. So there's reason to be like, hey, maybe, we might get hit by an asteroid. Who knows? I don't know. But during these times, we find that there's massive evolution. So the solar eclipse that we're seeing tomorrow is another signal. To me, what it is, it's not just a signal. It is day one. It is day one. It is the brand new birth of a new cycle starting right then. And we've had a lot of things in the last few years which have led up to this, right? There's various different ceremonies and rituals that have occurred over the last few years that have led up to this. But here's the thing is most of those have been done by the dark occultists because they're trying to hijack and transmutate the positive likeness, the creative energy, the imaginative energy of human beings for their own good. And what that really is, that darkness, what it really is, oh, that's a conversation right there. I'll tell you. But what I can tell you is the fear and the propaganda, all of this stuff that is coming about right now is trying to hijack the mojo that is being created. The problem is they've already lost. I mean, too many people are already looking at the solar eclipse as like the dawning of the age of Aquarius. It's the new awakening, and we're all evolving, and people are like, we're moving into the fifth dimension, man, right? Like, and here's the thing: is you can't stop that. They can't stop human ingenuity, imagination, and creativity. So they're trying to as much as possible, and this is why there's a very, very, very high potential that there is going to be something very drastic, catastrophic in the next weeks, because they want to drown that energy and hijack that energy because it is the creative inflow which makes us human. And that's one thing that they don't have the ability to do, whether they're sociopathic or whether they're not really organic biological beings. My theory.
It's a lot.
It is.
It's a lot, but at the same time, it makes sense. It makes complete sense what you're saying and how this cycle, we're hitting that apex to where we're about to come back, hitting day one would be tomorrow. My question or concern would be, we know about HARP, we know about the weather manipulation, we hear the speculation, or some would probably even say it's already proven of, technology that they have in Antarctica that affects earthquakes and, et cetera, et cetera. Have they been able to manipulate weather, or at least is the speculation there that they've been able to manipulate weather to where they can actually throw us off a little bit, or, affect this message that's coming through these magnetic, these tunnels between us and the sun because of what's going on?
Dude, great question. Getting into a darker side of things. So you had mentioned earlier CERN and portals and all this stuff. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, he believed that a solar eclipse blocked the aura of the earth and allowed new souls to come into the earth. Now, that's kind of interesting because Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, had a lot of things that he was absolutely right on. And where lunar eclipses allowed the souls to leave the earth. And so when we get into soul snatching and portals and all this type of stuff, CERN, there's context that comes in here. I think that what we're seeing right now, I'll go down this road. So Aleister Crowley, I'm not obsessed with the guy. There's people out there that think I'm a Satanist because I researched Aleister Crowley. And
you need to research him.
Right. You need to understand what he was talking about. And to a large degree, he created a religion known as Thelema or Thelema, right? This became the basis for the Sabbatean Frankists as well as modern day Satanists. So the Anton LaVey's Church of Satan was based upon much of the structure foundation created by Thelema. Now, the reason is because Crowley, he utilized a ritual of the Orient. And what the ritual of the Orient is opening up a magic portal. And this was the magic portal to Aiwass. And what that just simply means is that he used magic with his right brain. Right brain means orient or from the east, deriving from the east. He used his right brain to create a portal. He used deep magic, dark magic to open this portal. He channeled an ancient Egyptian priest who gave him this knowledge, or so he claims. And then he went on to fight a demon and all this stuff. And a lot of people believe that the demon overtook him and that the portal was left open. Now, whether that's true or not true, Jack Parsons comes into the story and he worked for JPL and helped get CERN up originally. Like, there's a lot of conspiracy stuff in there, and we really don't know what's true. Now,
he was living out here by me.
Yeah. And what I can tell people out there is that, do magicians have the ability, people who have studied white and dark magic, do they have the ability to create a quote unquote portal? Yes. What does that mean? It is a bridge between here and various different worlds. If you want to look at in the metaverse type, if you want to look in the spiritual world, astral world, doesn't matter. You can create that. And then information can flow both ways. Things can come over. Absolutely. It's real stuff. It does happen. Did Crawley do that? I do believe so. And the reason I believe so is because the Lima became the basis of religion for Hollywood, for all the socialite circles in New York, and then eventually into the entertainment industry in Hollywood. It became the base foundation for the Church of Satan, for the Temple of Set, Michael Aquino and Anton LaVey. So utilizing that was then hijacked, I would say, and controlled by what's known as Sabbatean Frankists, which are the dark Kabbalists. The fake Jews, if we want to call them that, the fake Jews. And this comes from Sabbatai Zevi in the late 1600s, who believed he was the reborn again Messiah. And he was labeled as the Antichrist. He died. His top student, Thomas Franks, he went and said that Sabbatai Zevi is now inside me, and now I'm the leader. And some of the top students within this in the late 1600s, early 1700s, were a family by the name of the Bowers. And the Bowers were the top financiers of Sabbatianism. Now, by the late 1700s, that family had changed their name from Bauer to the name of their business that they had, which was known as Red Shield or Rothschild. And these are known as Sabbatean Frankists now, which is not it's more of a form of Satanism, if you want to look at it. It's dark magic. Just understand it as dark magic. And then they go on to fund the socialist revolutions, Karl Marx, and the socialist revolutions in Europe. They fund the War of 1812. They fund all these various different escapades throughout the next 200 years that produce massive strife. 1913, the Balfour Accord comes into play. Palestine is given to the Rothschilds. That's what Zionism was all about, to reestablish the home of the Zionist people, the Sabbatean Frankists, back into Jerusalem so they could rebuild the temple, so they could control it all. And that's kind of where we are at today, because we know how that all ended up. And this is why when I say Israel, I'm not talking about the Hebrew people. I'm not talking about the Jewish people. I'm talking about the Sabbatean Frankists. I'm talking about the fake Jews. I'm talking about the Jewish deep state, if you want to look at it like that, the Jewish deep state. And they are dark Kabbalists. Now, they have the ability to do exactly what we're talking about here. Absolutely 100%. They can do some very, very dark things. Now, the question is tomorrow going to be that?
Well, before you answer that, we got a Rumble rant that came through. Let me throw it up on the screen real quick. So we could read it. Red Pillar 27. Hey, Alpha. This is the first time that I'm listening to your show. And were you guys just talking about DNA? Holy synchronicity. Love the woo talk. This is awesome. AKA free thinker. And I love when I hear people being free thinkers, brother.
Awesome. I love it, man. Oh, yeah. I love talking about DNA. I can talk about DNA all day long. But when we start talking about what's going to happen tomorrow, if we see some type of mass casualty event tomorrow, I'm telling you right now, it's not dark Akala. It's your government doing it, people. It's the implementation of fear. If we see like hundreds of thousands tsunami type of event, oh yeah, that's dark occultist. It's a sacrifice. It is the collection of souls, all this stuff. But I think tomorrow what we're going to see is we're going to see a normal day. We're going to see an eclipse. It's going to go dark. If you do some type of ritual within yourself, some spiritual ritual, there's a lot of various theories out there in different spiritual contexts that say that during a solar eclipse, the Earth's aura is shrouded. And during that time, you get to absorb a lot of that solar energy that is being sent to the Earth. And that can have profound effects on you, your person, and your powers within yourself, and your personal empowerment. So I urge everybody to get out there, take your shoes off, take your socks off, dip your feet into the ground. One thing I always say, don't get those stupid glasses. Don't be wearing a welder's shield or any of this stuff. Just look at it with your peripheral. And once it starts to get covered, you should be able to look at it, no problem. And then just look at it and take it in. Look at it. So one thing that I do is you close your eyes. When you close your eyes, guess what? You can see the outline of the sun and you can see the shadow moving over it. It's really cool. And you're still getting all of that good frequency, that vitamin D and all those other different wavelengths that are coming at you. When you put those glasses on, you have various different optic receptors within the skins of your cell and in your eyes, as well as inside your brain. And the various different wavelengths that are coming off the sun, especially during a solar eclipse, are incredibly powerful and important to you. And they do activate certain things within you, like various different cortisol responses, stress responses, as well as vitamin D, K production.
There's a reason, if we go all the way back to a certain disease that was floating around the planet, if you subscribe to that, they were telling everybody stay inside. Don't go to the beaches. Don't get sun. And I know it's a movie, but a lot of times they talk to us in movies, and I'll bring us back to the movie Superman. He's getting his rocks. He's getting rocked. And what does he do? Shoots up into space. Has the sun hit him, and what does the sun do? It rejuvenates him. It brings his strength back. He comes back and he lays down the smack. I mean, it's that idea had to come from somewhere. Yeah. I don't think that was just some Hollywood script.
Yep. And well, it is. And, we can look at all the various different religions around this planet for the last 8,000 years. And the majority of them are solar cults, are solar religions, the worship of the quite literal sun in the sky. And there's a reason for that. It provides life. And I think it provides life in more ways than we can ever imagine. I think that it does have profound spiritual effects as well as physical effects on us. And I think that tomorrow is one of those days to where we actually have that ability as a human species, or at least as Americans, right? I mean, think about the millions of people tomorrow that are all going to partake in this ritual. That's significant.
I'm glad you brought that up. And I think I might have mentioned this when we did the show with Nino. But I think one of the reasons they push this fear porn, or at least the concern, is because of the power of manifestation. Mm-hmm. And if you can get enough people scared and worried, there's a frequency there. There's a vibration that's there. But if we can, and that's why I wanted to do this show, is to let people know, hey, this is what's out there. But you don't got to be worried either way. Especially if you believe in your creator. I want to bring up something real quick, but we had another Rumble rant come up. So let me pop that up real quick. This comes from AMAX308, $10 Rumble rant. Appreciate it. 1 Corinthians 2:5, that your faith should not stand in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God. Love people when they bring up scripture. But you were talking about eights. And I want to go back to, which is a good diagram that has, I'll go back to this one because this one shows it. And when you look at the picture to the left, and it shows the total solar eclipses in 2017 and 2024, and we know that the first time around it crossed the 7 cities of Salem, and this time it's going to cross. This is what I found this interesting. I'm curious that tomorrow's eclipse, we keep hearing that it's going to cross the 7 cities of Nineveh. However, there's actually 8 if you count. There's a Nineveh in Canada that it's going to cross over. So, well, 2 things. There's 2 that are in the direct total line. So of the Nineveh, there's two Nineveh cities that are going to be in the total eclipse. And then there's a total of 6 more if you include the one from Canada, making it 8 that are all, and that, that pretty thick block that are going to cross through there. And when you look at what you're talking about, 8, being the reset, the beginning, it's almost one of those things where this makes me wonder, because the way social media is right now, people hear something and then everybody just wants to get it out instead of looking into it. Right. And I'm telling you, when I looked into it, I was like, whoa, time out. There's actually 8 of them, but no one's talking about that, And now granted, technically, yes, 7 in the United States, but still, if we're talking about the whole thing here, then it is 8.
So going to the manifestation thing, the 8 thing, all of this. We are incredibly powerful beings. I want everybody to understand that. Okay? That the human mind is incredibly powerful. When we are all aligned and focused together, we're more powerful than standing armies. So going back to the power of manifestation, they want us all to be fear porn and all this stuff. You're absolutely right. But that's the thing, is it's not going to happen. There's so many people out there talking positively, or at least in the sense of revelation or biblically, about tomorrow, that when people go out and witness this cosmic event that's happening tomorrow, their hearts are going to be full with God. Their hearts are full of love. And see, that's the thing that the darkness in this world can't stop. That's the thing that they want to stop. That's why they've set their sights on disconnecting you and me from our source, from our creator, from whatever it is we want to call it. That's what the little thing in the side of the shoulder was all about. That's what the lockdowns were all about. That's what this tyranny and oppression is all about, is to disconnect you from that source. Because whatever this evil is, it seems to not have that power. And that's the beautiful thing. It seems to not have that power. So it wants to concentrate it and take it from you. It wants to be able to control you to that large degree, to where it can consume your power and use it for itself. And see, that's the plight of whatever this evil is it can't.
I love how you word that. We got a big audience right now, so I want to take a moment to take advantage of the fact that we have a big audience right now. And tell everybody, do us a solid, smash that thumbs up, help get this algorithm out there. Hit the little box with the arrow up. If you're on Rumble, share this out for people to find it. But Josh, while we're here, and for those that are already impressed with you, and we still got a lot to cover, you guys, and we'll cover it again at the end, but where can people follow you, and what's your website so people can go to that? And then while you're doing that, I'm going to bring up something to show people what NASA has on their website as far as what it looks tomorrow. But go ahead and tell everybody.
Yeah, Twitter, guys, at Real Joshua Reid. Reid is spelled R-E-I-D. You can see that on the scroll bar below, at Real Joshua Reid on Twitter. Or just go to my website, redpills.tv, redpills.tv. And all of our streaming channels are linked up there. You can find all different types of links at the top, from private social networks to the ways are get over to our social media and follow us over there. It's much appreciated. Thank you so much, Alpha, on that, as well as our Rumble channel. Just type in Red Pill Project in that search bar on Rumble, and you can find that. It's also linked up at redpills.tv.
Absolutely. So what I'm going to bring on the screen right now, you guys can find it at, and then the links will be down in the description after the show, at science.nasa.gov is where they have this. And just for those that, have really just said, hey, I don't want to, I've discounted, I haven't been paying attention, on this website page, and I'll hit play right here. It's just going to show the path of kind of how this looks for people that want to track it. And I'll let this play, and I don't know if you want to comment on it, or is there something else?
So one of the questions that I saw a lot with people was, if the sun is moving east to west, why is the eclipse going west to east? Right. Why is the eclipse going west to east? Shouldn't it be going the other way? And the reason is because if you move a light over anything that's still, the shadow moves in the opposite direction of the light. So for anybody out there that's wondering about that, the way that this happens is it's a new moon. A new moon is predictable. It happens every month. It is the opposition of a full moon. So you have a full moon that comes on one side of the earth, and the other side of the earth, you're going to have a new moon, to where you're not going to see the full moon on the other side of the earth. And occasionally what happens is that new moon passes in front of the sun, or the sun passes in front of the moon, or the earth's shadow passes in front of the moon, and you get a lunar eclipse. And these happen roughly every 6 months, 18 months for totality, these types of things. They're very common, but to get one that's going right over top of you, that is sometimes a once in a lifetime event. I've been fortunate enough. I was in the military. I was overseas. I was in the middle of the ocean, that big old blue part of the ocean. There's no land over there. We were in there and we saw a solar eclipse. It was pretty crazy. In the middle of the ocean, being one of only 100 people on the planet to see it, that was pretty cool. But it's pretty significant to be able to see a solar eclipse. Some people only see it once in their life, especially one with totality. So take it in tomorrow. And yeah, there is a lot of aspects of how this is biblical. Do I believe that rapture is going to happen? What does that really mean? Do we really know what that means? I mean, if the last 7 years have really been tribulation, that isn't necessarily what we thought it was going to be, was it?
I agree with you.
Right? And if that was tribulation, well, then rapture and apocalypse. Well, what does apocalypse mean? That's a good one, right? What does apocalypse mean? Revelation and apocalypse are synonymous, right? The word apocalypse, have you ever heard that the first origins of Christianity actually came from Northern Africa?
No, I've not heard that.
Yeah, so much of original Christianity spread in Northern Africa. Copticism, or the Egyptian Christians, were some of the original Christians that helped spread the word. There's a Coptic word that comes out of it. The word apocalypse, apocalypto, is Greek, but it comes from an Egyptian word, which represents the unveiling. Okay? The unveiling. You got to remember the Greeks, the Hyksos kings, were in Egypt for a long period of time. The unveiling refers to the ancient Egyptian mysteries of Osiris and Isis and Horus. Now, Isis, the goddess of fertility, also could be related to Iana and Mesopotamian, Ishtar, Babylonian, right? She was the goddess of knowledge, wisdom, and fertility and resurrection. So spring goddess.
Hold on. Is this going to take us towards a certain name of a certain rocket?
Yes.
Let's do this real quick before we go there then, because I want to bring up the article for people to see it. But we got another Rumble rant because people are being generous tonight. So let me bring that up on the screen. This comes from S_Hole. Solar eclipse will pass through, quote, Rapture, Indiana. And since you brought that up here, because like I said, I hear things, but then I go search it out because people can say that, but does it really mean that? So the first thing I wanted to check is, because when you looked at Salem, Nineveh, there's lots of those. So I was curious, well, how many raptures are in the United States? And I went to look it up. and Josh might know this already. Do you know how many raptures are in the United States, brother?
I don't.
There is only one rapture city.
Well, then it's a rapture. Look at that.
The United States. And I'll bring this up on the screen so people can see it. It's like I said, it's in Indiana. It's actually called a township of where it's at. So for those that are wondering, now obviously on the side you can see how it lists all these other cities and how many there are. But when it comes to, there's only one place named Rapture in the United States. So the next thing I want to bring up, since it's going to go into the conversation you're talking about, is NASA wallops to launch 3 sounding rockets to the solar eclipse. So I'm just going to read this first paragraph because this is what NASA is saying. For those that are curious, and it reads, 3 Black Brant 9 sounding rockets for the atomic sphere perturbations around the eclipse path APEP mission are scheduled to launch from NASA's Wallop Flight Facility launch range in Virginia. The launch window opens April 8th, 2024 at 2:40 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, launching approximately 45 minutes before, during, and after the peak of the local eclipse. The APEP sounding rockets will study how the Earth's upper atmosphere is affected when sunlight momentarily dims over a portion of the planet. Targeted launch times for the 3 rockets are 2:40 p.m., 3:20 p.m., and 4:05 p.m., but may be subject to change. These launches will be live streamed on Wallop's YouTube beginning at 2:30 p.m. So this is what NASA is saying, why these rockets are going. But this name APEP has a pretty interesting story to it. So I'll bring this on the screen. Weird. And take it away, because this is one of the most fascinating things that I've heard you share when it comes to this stuff.
Okay. Well, first, let's start with the apocalypse. So the myth in ancient mythology is that no one had ever lifted the veil of Isis and learned the mysteries of the universe. universe, except for one man. His name was Thoth, or Hermes Trismegistus. He lifted, learned the mysteries, and then was sent his 4 disciples to the 4 corners of the earth to restart civilization after the Great Flood. So what it's telling us is that the last time that the veil of Isis was lifted, the last time of the apocalypse, a great flood happened. So really important to understand that.
It's in the Bible.
There is another myth out there of the Egyptian goddesses, so forth. Osiris, Isis, and Horus. Osiris, the king of the universe, his sister wife Isis was the queen of the universe, goddess of fertility, resurrection. He was killed by his brother Set, right? His brother Set killed him. His sister put him back together, couldn't find one piece, which was his penis. She melted him one out of gold. He becomes resurrected for one night. She becomes impregnated, rebirths him 9 months later as Horus, which is the resurrection of Osiris. That phallic symbol that she melded him out of gold became what's known as an obelisk, and it's also the Washington Monument, which is 555.55 feet tall. 5 fives represents the 5 elements, the 5 senses, all these different variations in occultism. Now, who was Osiris? Osiris is the king of the universe in the sense he'd be the same deity as Zeus. He would be the same deity as Yahweh in Christian religion. Okay. A few years ago, there was 2 different ceremonies that happened in ancient Egypt. One was the setting to rest the new kingdom of ancient Egypt. This would be Amenhotep, Tutankhamun. They had a big parade where they marched them down through Cairo to a museum and laid them all to rest. They all had their own individual cars. They mapped them out, all this stuff. About 7 months later, about almost 8 months later, they had another ceremony of the reopening of the King's Highway or the King's Road. This is the old Thebes, and this is between Luxor and Karnak. Now, old Thebes is Osiris. This is the land of Osiris. The road is 1.7 miles long, which is 17 is the number of Osiris. The star Sirius, which is representative of Osiris, is 1.7 degrees in declination. So it has astrological significance and mythological significance. Now, these various different ceremonies that they're doing is calling about the resurrection, the rebirth of the Osirian energy, the Osiris energy. Okay. Now, any way that we want to look at Osiris in characterization, we can look at him as Ra, we can look at him as Horus, we can look at it in, don't attack me. You can look at it as Jesus, you can look at it as Krishna, you can look at it as any new god that is reborn in the new age as a resurrection of Osiris, because that's how occultists look at it. When I saw this, Alpha, I was blown away because Apep just happens to be the nemesis of Ra, also known as Apophis. Now, Apophis was the nemesis of Horus. Well, the counterpart for Osiris was named Set, his brother. So Set, Apophis, and Apep are all the same deity. It's all the same thing. These are the ones that kill the grand god and then reset the cycle and allow for the resurrection to occur and begin. So when I saw this, I'm like, these son of a bitches, I can't believe they're doing this. I'll go ahead and read this. That Apep is named after the Egyptian serpent god, who is the nemesis to Ra. In Egyptian mythology, this is the same as Set, or better known as Apophis, known as the Lord of Chaos. Apep embodied darkness and disorder, and thus was the opponent of light to Ra. He lived in the underworld and was known as the Eater of Souls. Interestingly enough, we talked about it earlier, Edgar Cayce in his prophetic visions claimed that solar eclipses brought new souls to Earth. Don't think for a moment that a cult is not performing a ritual with this, because they absolutely are. And even they'll be like, well, it's just a coincidence we named it Apep. No, it's not. And it's not a coincidence either that CERN is starting back up tomorrow, exactly around that same time, doing high energy particle collisions to create dark matter. Now, is that going to open up a portal and suck souls in? I don't know. I don't think so.
Here's the thing. I don't know either. And you know, for those that are, you know, that get uncomfortable with, you know, quote unquote fringe content, you don't have to believe this.
Mhm.
You just have to understand they
do.
believe this.
Yes.
Because and that's why you have to study people like, you know, Alex Crowley and Hitler and all these other people. A, because history didn't always tell us the truth, but B, if you do subscribe that it is true what you're reading, you got to learn how they operate. You got to learn how they think, because how do you adjust or how do you fight back if you don't even know your enemy's playbook? So, you know, people have to understand you have to study. One of the things that I read in here says that APEP was often depicted as a huge serpent with tightly compressed coils. Isn't this? I could be off here, but are we in the year of the dragon, or isn't there like a
We
dragon
are in the year of the
significant?
dragon. You were absolutely right. What
I'm.
a great correlation.
It's just how many coincidences before it's statistically impossible to be a
Well, did
coincidence?
you know that in ancient cultures, they looked at solar eclipses as the great serpent moving through the sky, devouring the sun?
I did not know that.
Almost every single one of them. The majority of the various Asian or Oriental philosophies believe that the great dragon would devour the sun in various different cycles. Now, what this represented, Alpha, whenever you hear dragon or serpent in the sky, think of a sine wave. Okay. What they're saying is that what's being resurrected is not a deity, it's the sun. The sun in the sky is being resurrected. It's going from a point of low energy to rebirth into a new cycle. So, in order for it to be rebirthed, it has to die first. Okay. This is what we just went through for 8,000 years, is the death of the sun.
Well, two. I guess you call one a shape and the other one a pattern that you talked about earlier was, you know, the infinity symbol or the figure eight. But then, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, well, on this top picture to the left, up here, like the bluish one,
Yeah, the
you
coils of the
see,
serpent.
yeah, the coils of the serpent. You see, like I see the infinity symbol and I see these, you know, the number eight there. But also down here on the bottom right, the one that looks more like a hieroglyphic, you see the serpent, and it kind of looks like that pattern. You say that the sun goes, or that, you know, the way we went, you know, up and down as we did this rotation. Now, did these people understand that way back then, and they knew it, and we just been misreading their hieroglyphics this whole time, or didn't realize there was more meaning to them? I don't know, man. I don't know, but I am curious.
So, yes, absolutely. That this is what I've been trying to say for a very, very long time, is that the dragon or the serpent in the sky is always representative of a cycle, a cyclic nature. And that cyclic nature is traditionally the death and the rebirth of the sun. Now, what does that mean? The death and the rebirth of the sun. Because we don't really see any change. When our sun moves through our sky on Earth, we see that analemma, right? We see that analemma shape that is actually occurring. But do people really understand what's going on there? And that's the question. So I'm gonna kind of draw some context here and then show why this is a rebirth of it. So starting at this point right here, the lowest point, the sun starts rising 1 degree every day in the sky. It'll rise 1 degree every day until it reaches this spot. Now that's summer. Okay. Now what's interesting is right here, that equinox part, we get more sunlight than we do darkness because the days are no longer shorter. Okay. So we get more daytime than we get darkness right there at the equinox point. But right at summer, what's the next point? What happens to the sun? It begins to
Come
fall.
back down. Yeah.
Fall. What's the next season after summer?
Now you got fall.
It comes in the fall. Why? Because the sun's falling from the height of its ministry. And then it goes 1 degree every day. But then something interesting happens, Alpha. When you get back down here to December 21st, the winter solstice, solstice means stand still. Okay? When it gets back down here to the summer solstice, if you watch the sun on this day, it's not going to rise or decline 1 degree. It's going to stay still right there for 3 days. Now the sun sets on those 3 days, in the southern hemisphere in the constellation of Crux. So it's said that the sun dies and 3 days later, it's resurrected and begins to move up again.
That sounds like
happens on
Easter,
December
brother.
25th. That happens on December 25th. The sun is resurrected and begins to move 1 degree in the sky every day. It's astromythology, right? Astrotheology. So here's the thing, is if you look at this from a galactic cycle of the sun moving through the arm of the galaxy, it does the same thing. It goes to summer, it goes to spring and fall, and it goes to a winter point. And we came out of winter and are now beginning to get more light in that galactic transit. And so this is what the various different dragon cycles represent. The size of the dragon, so forth. Now, what's interesting is if you go back to various different myths within Mesopotamian mythology, there's one of Tiamat. And this one I think is very significant because this really fills in a lot of blanks. There's a lot of cosmologists and astronomers in the early 19 and mid 1900s that said that this wasn't a myth. This actually happened. But there's a story of the serpent Tiamat in the sky who is defeated by Marduk, who is the sun god. What they're really talking about is a planetary collision, the destruction of a planet. And this planet produced a debris field, which the Earth went through for millions of years. And as the Earth went through this debris field, it was demolished and all civilization was demolished. It wasn't able to reset. They'd get 2,000 years into civilization, they get reset. 2,000 years into civilization, they get reset. And this brought in the whole idea of these various cataclysmic dragon cycles. One of the interesting things about it is we actually used to have a 360-day calendar. If you go back far enough in ancient mythology and into symbolic context, you find out that there is 360 days in their calendar. 360 degrees in their calendar. 360 days in their calendar. And that there's no lunar cycles. And there's no talk about the moon. Now, you've heard about the great cataclysm in the Lower Dryas time period and all this stuff and the earth and the flood and all that. What would cause something like that? You ever heard the stories of Lucifer who shone in the night sky as bright as the sun, as God? Right? What if that was a comet that was left over from this planet? What if there was a moon from a planet that was destroyed millions of years ago that we saw coming for thousands of years in the sky that got brighter and brighter and brighter to eventually it produced a gravitational tug on the Earth, moved the Earth 23.5 degrees gravitationally. It both turned and then warped Earth's orbit by 5.25 days. What would happen on the planet? The Earth would almost stand still. There'd be darkness. There'd be flooding. The oceans would flood over the whole planet. People would have to find refuge in tunnels underneath massive cities. All civilization would be completely decimated. Then what they would do is they would come in and they would look at that object in the sky as some profound pronunciation of evil. And in Mesopotamian lore, the god Sin, who rose over the great mountains, was the god of the moon. His name was Sin. Now take that same name Sin into Abrahamic religions. And that is the great sin, the ultimate sin, the first sin, is the one that destroyed civilization, the one that produced the great flood, the moon.
You know, it's interesting because one of the questions that's been presented to me before, and it's not related to this topic, but it ties into this conversation with the moon, is there's some ancient civilizations, hieroglyphics and stuff that we find that show the sun, that shows stars, it shows everything, but it doesn't show a moon. Like there's no reference to it. And it's like, if they're documenting everything, why wouldn't they document the moon? I want to bring up, there was a comment, I have it saved. Let me bring it back up real quick. Comes from Lindsay14. Looks like she's responding to at 16 guy. Yes, it's an ellipse tomorrow, not an eclipse. And the reason this caught my attention is you had, I think it was the director from NASA, and I'll see if I can find the video as well.
I got the video.
Oh, sweet. You want to bring that up?
Yeah, let me grab it real quick.
And so in this video, we'll play it for you guys to hear what he says. Pay attention to what he says in the very beginning.
Well,
and you'll
first
see
I know he's a drunk.
okay, Occam's razor, that could be the easiest explanation to
Yeah.
it sounds that way.
Know that the guy is an absolute drunk. And you can even hear him starting to speech, but let me bring this up.
As Josh brings that on the screen, you guys, down in the description of the video, if you're watching on Rumble, all the links to find Josh, all the links to find me. I didn't run any commercials on this one because I wanted to get right into the content of this because it's special, special episode tonight. But do me a solid, go down there, go visit the alphawarriorshow.tv, visit redpills.tv, support the people that support us, and let me bring the video up on the screen. Ready when you are, brother.
All right.
Said that at NASA, our mission is for all humanity, and that's because space brings us together. There's no better proof than moments like this, a total solar ellipse.
There is
It's a moment.
total solar ellipse. Now, he is a drunk, but what's he talking about there? I don't know what's going through his alien. I don't even think that dude's human. I think he's wearing a human silicon meat suit. It's probably some gray alien under there. I don't know. The thing about eclipses is that they're cyclic in nature. We know exactly when they happen, where they're going to happen, and when they happen. And this one is spot on mathematically. So it definitely is an eclipse. But why did he say ellipse? Ellipse and eclipse, it doesn't even make much sense. I mean, the sun, yeah, it's in the ellipse in the sense of the transit, but I think it was Occam's razor. He just mistook. But if we want to listen to the whole video, because it kind of gets interesting.
Millions of people across North America will look to the heavens as the moon passes in front and between the sun and the earth. And it's a rare sight that we haven't seen in 7 years. And unusual things start to happen as the normal rhythms of Earth are disrupted.
Wait, what?
You're seeing this eclipse. You ought to observe this. As the day appears to turn to dusk and then dark, people have heard birds stop singing. They've seen giraffes suddenly begin to gallop. Roosters start crowing and crickets chirp. So watch for these unusual behaviors. And we encourage you to help NASA observe the sights and sounds around you. Eclipses have a special power. They move people to feel a kind of reverence for the beauty of our universe. Their power is not only to unify us on Earth, but to further science and discovery. In 1919, Albert Einstein's theory of gravitational bending was proven when scientists measured how stars shift when the sun is blocked out by the moon. And today, over a century later, a total solar eclipse still brings great opportunity in science. Pam is going to share a little.
Okay, so kind of eerie the way he talks about that, isn't it?
He made some interesting statements, bro.
He did.
I mean, the part about the way the birds change and the giraffes. I mean, I can write that off as in these animals. Hey, it's dark. I'm not supposed to be out. This is when the predators come. I get all that, but when he's like, human behaviors, and you might hear and witness weird things. So call NASA. First of all, if something got crazy, I would tell people either have your freedom seeds ready or call 911. Like NASA's on the bottom of the priority list of who you're going to call. But it's just one of those things that, what's this dude talking about?
Yep. So there's something more here that I think is not being said. And for me, you know me, Alpha, like if I'm going to say something like this, I have to be like, there has to be some type of leadway from science to why I'm going to say it. Have you ever heard of Foucault's pendulum?
No, I've not.
So do you know the flat earthers will like hang a pendulum from like one of those areas?
Oh, it's the one that hits
it'll
the
move
ping,
with
ping,
the
ping.
Earth's rotation, right?
Right.
But it's not moving. It's just the Earth's rotation is what you're actually observing. Well, in the early 1900s, a few different scientists did this experiment, and they did it during a solar eclipse. And what they noticed is something strange happened. Is during that time period of the solar eclipse, the pendulum's movement, which is basically concise with the rotation of the Earth, moved 17 or 19 degrees faster during the solar eclipse. And they're like, that's odd. So they waited for another solar eclipse, did it again, and it happened again. And it's been tested all around the world. And guess what? Every time during a solar eclipse, the same thing happens. And interesting enough, they have no idea why. So it's kind of odd because that would make you think that the Earth's rotation speeds up just slightly during a solar eclipse. Now, what I find interesting is the gravitational effects, because there are slight gravitational effects, that when planetary bodies line up, there is a gravitational tug. We know that when the moon moves from one side of the Earth to the other side of the Earth, it wobbles the Earth just slightly and moves the oceans to produce something known as tides. And when that moon is within that alignment of the sun, the greatest gravitational mass in our solar system, that there is a longer or more sturdy tug that is generated, an increased level of gravitational force, specifically on water. Now, remember earlier I was saying that our DNA has water enclosed within it? Right. That our bodies are 72 to 80% water. I was doing a show, Astro Mythic Solar Eclipse, on Friday night with an astrologer friend of mine and David, who's David Whitehead, who does esoteric occult stuff. Fantastic. You should absolutely have him on too. But David was saying, he goes, I live by the ocean. I go over to the ocean and the ocean does something to you. Like when you stand by the ocean in those waves, it does something to you. And I said, yeah, absolutely it does. He goes, what do you mean? I go, well, the ocean is a massive electronegative force. Water is highly electronegative, but water is also hydrostatic because the hydrogen is positive. And so water attracts water. And so when you're standing next to the ocean and those waves are going back in and forth, right? It's tugging on the water in your body, just gently, creating an oscillation, right? So now imagine these gravitational fluctuations that happen when the moon and the sun kind of slightly come together. Now, if we look at that, when the ocean does it to you, or when a body of water does it to you, we tend to get a little emotional. We tend to feel more sensitive. What happens during a full moon? It's been scientifically proven that a full moon, which is a high tide, has the same effect on human beings. Why? Because we come to a heightened point of emotion.
Which is the reason in law enforcement, nobody ever wants to work on a full moon, because we always say the freaks come out on the full moon and all the craziness happens.
And the reason most likely is because there's an oscillation occurring in your body. The water molecules in your body are slightly oscillating to the gravitational tidal forces and to the oceanic forces. And there's most likely some type of balance that occurs. And then during times of solar eclipses or full moons, that's slightly off balance. It increases the sensitivity of our emotional bodies and our emotional states. And so when we look at the solar eclipses, like, yeah, dude, it absolutely does something special to us. It increases, I would say, even our psychic awareness, our psychic sensitivity. It makes us highly more intuitive as well as highly more sensitive in the sense of manifestation and connectivity to the universe.
Let me ask you this. This question was presented to me. This is going to be woo-woo, you guys, but I told you there's going to be a lot of woo-woo here tonight. I won't say his name because I didn't ask him if he wanted me to, and if he does, I'll put it in the credits later. But he talks about these multiple timelines, that we exist on, and each one of these timelines, even though they run an identical timeline, the event structures are different, and then the frequencies are different. And he was saying that since we're all running the same time, like we're the same day, same month, same day, same hour, same minute, second, millisecond, etc., that when events like this happen, that it's the closest we come to being in sync with ourselves on multiple timelines. Does that make sense at all?
What a great dude. We're in sync, man. So I just pulled up something I was going to show you, but I needed a good segue, and you just went into it.
Okay, right on. There we go.
Okay.
Synergy, baby.
It absolutely is. So your DNA, the way I look at DNA is quantum entangled through time. So number one is the linearity of time does not exist. We experience time in a linear fashion. The only thing that really exists is now. The past and the future are both in probabilistic form. This is why we have things like the Mandela effect, because they can both be influenced by the now. Okay. If you get into multi-universe theory, the same context still applies, right? And just imagine that you're quantumly entangled throughout all of the multiverses or all of the past and the present and future together. This is also something that our ancestors try to tell us symbolically. That you're right, is when we have these rare occurrent events, that it's not only happening here, it's happening in all of those variations. Not only is it this solar eclipse, but all the solar eclipses in time are noted together in sequence to where you have this direct connection to all of that in a quantum entangled fashion. Now, symbolically, our ancestors represented the balance of the universe through various symbols. Do you know one of the most popular ancient symbols that our ancestors embodied balance and cycle and balance through? Do you know what symbol it is?
No, the one that comes to mind is that one that looks like an eye, but I don't know if that's the one you're talking about.
This is one of the most profound symbols in the world when it comes to balance and harmony. Okay?
Yeah.
That's the yin-yang symbol, right?
Right.
What if I told you our ancestors were trying to tell us something very, very special about the nature of the universe, about harmony and balance are the intertwining of the entanglement of the universe, of how we are entangled through time and space, how we are entangled through all various aspects of the multiverse. This is visualizing the mysterious dance, quantum entanglement of photons captured in real time. That's what it looks like.
Let me tell you why you just gave me the chills. I have a buddy, Dan Radio Style, on the Fringe. He's on Rumble. Go find him. I love that guy. Brother from another mother. We just started a new show, and we've been wanting to do it for a while. It's just, you do this yourself. I mean, time is not something that's in our favor when it comes to, content creation. But the show is called Synchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
And the logo that we came up with has the yin yang theme to it. And so when you and we did the first episode this Friday that just passed.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yes, bro.
So it's actually funny because I was showing this symbol on my show Friday. But what is this? This is the mysterious dance, quantum entanglement of photons captured in real time. And what is it? It's the yin yang. It's the ultimate symbol of balance and harmony, of two cycles oscillating together through time. And what they found out about quantum entanglement is that there's a non-locality aspect. So if anybody out there knows quantum physics, you have something known as the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Is the cat alive and dead when we put the radioactive decay element into the box? Is the cat alive or dead? Who knows? Well, they've actually answered that question, is that it's not alive or dead. It's in a non-local state. It is in a uncollapsed waveform. Is that it doesn't exist outside of the conscious one observer's purview, that nothing exists outside of that. And that quantum entanglement is showing us that everything around us is in this probabilistic form of entanglement. which is kind of interesting if we look at it from that view, but this is kind of how the quantum world operates. This is why we can say that there's no past and there's no future. They all exist in a probabilistic state. The beauty of these quantum entangled particles showing us the yin yang is that it says that these cycles cross correlate for a reason, that they overlap for a reason, that various different node points of a cycle, every 6 months, there's a solar eclipse, every 18 months, there's a totality eclipse, that every 18 months, that cycle is going to continuously repeat throughout the history of mankind. And with that cycle is that is a node point in time and space of recapturing that quantum potential. For anybody out there who's into manifestation and understanding how these things work, moving into the future or moving into the past, dealing with past traumas and clearing those out of your body and your system. And if you ever thought about this, you go and you do like spiritual work, you go into self-hypnosis or hypnosis, you work with a therapist, and you go to, traumas earlier in your life, where you go to past lives and you work through traumas. It's like a chain link that uncouples. All the problems throughout your life and your past just disappear that were connected to that. Why? Because you've undone that collapsed wave function and now made it back to probabilistic, to where all those things no longer affected you. All the things that branched out from that one trauma no longer affect you anymore. It was the uncoupling of that chain of time. That was your past. The beautiful thing is you can do that with your future.
You just totally described the process of EDMR and what they do for people with trauma and PTSD, where they have you recount this traumatic event, but they're doing other stuff at the same time because they're trying to get that event, like you just said, unlinked.
Yeah.
So so people go look up EDMR if you think this is woo-woo, because this is actually being used on a lot of our troops, military and law enforcement, as first responders.
Well, and also a lot of these therapies came about through various different types of hypnosis that were used for past life regressions to reduce trauma. There's a great book out there for your audience. It's called Many Lives, Many Masters by Dr. Brian Weiss. It's a really old book, about 30 years old. The first story that he talks about, he's a hypnotherapist. He does different regression therapies with people who have chronic pain. He has this older lady overweight, and she has chronic back pain. And he's taken her through life to trying to find the spot in her life where the chronic back pain is happening. And there's nothing in her life that is showing where this chronic back pain is. And Alpha, this is a real story. And I want people to listen to what he says here. He says, so then I asked her, I said, take me to the spot to where this back pain started. And she goes, I'm walking through the woods. I'm wearing all green. I look like an army soldier. And he goes, do you notice anything about you? A name, a dog tag? She goes, I could read my dog tags. And she reads off the dog tags, gives the name, all of that information. Then all of a sudden she goes, oh my God, I was just stabbed in the back. Someone batoned her in the back. She turns around, shoots the German soldier, and falls down to the ground and dies. And he goes, before you die, pull the baton out of your back. And she pulls the baton out of her back. He brings her out of the hypnotherapy, chronic back pain completely gone.
Bro.
So here's the key. He couldn't live with it because he didn't believe in past lives. So he's like, I got to find out if that was real. So he went and researched the army soldier. World War I, the same guy died in the forest of Germany, was stabbed in the back by a baton. So the power of these things, right? That, yeah, we have multiple lives, and past lives are real, and future lives are real, and we have traumas that are suffered from these various points of life. And this is one of the things that like solar eclipse remind you, because in all of those lives, there's these temporal node points that take us back to that. You could probably do various different trauma therapies tomorrow during the solar eclipse, and it'll connect you back to all that stuff, right? But a lot of that stuff is very, very real. And so a lot of those therapies were developed out of these different past life regressions and dealing with past life traumas. And a lot of people who are suffering today might not know why they're suffering. And that could be one of the things. And there's some really good therapists out there, but there's some very shitty therapists out there. So be very, very careful. The best part is to do the therapy yourself. and just understand. I talk about this a lot in my shows in the sense of how the brain construct works when you're in the state of self-hypnosis. And one of the things that you have to watch out for is when you're in your imagination. Have you ever heard like my pineal gland is calcified and I got to open it and stuff? Your pineal gland is wide open. Everybody's pineal gland is wide open. It's been a complete conspiracy theory telling you that it's calcified and it's not working. Your pineal gland is 100% wide open. The problem with it is you don't know the language of how it communicates. It's like speaking gibberish to you. And that language is symbolic, it's archetypical, and it's imaginative. Your imagination is your third eye, people. Okay. And if you can't control your imagination with discipline, if you can't go in there and keep a steady stream of thought within that imagination and allow it to progress and create and build off the top of each other, your mind keeps on wandering. That is a deviation away from that power of that third eye. But to kind of clear this up and go to another point here is that our imagination is that creative force in the universe. And it's also that point that connects us to these deeper states of mind and consciousness and to past and future and so on and so forth. And if you learn how to use it to a wide degree, you can master your domain. But the problem is, especially when people do self-hypnosis, is they allow things within their social construct to come in and dominate. So people will be like, I had this vision and angels came down and they talked to me and they gave me this message, or God's talk, or like all these things. The thing is that's the social construct taking over and filling in the space in between with your own narrative. And you have to learn how to really kind of separate that, to produce this dichotomy within your imagination to where you always have to go in with an intention. It's not free flow. Free flow means that your social construct is really taken over, right? But you have to be very, very careful on how that works, especially with self-hypnosis. It takes years and years and years of training. That's why you have various monks and stuff like this that do 30, 40, 50 years in isolation just to learn how to control that power within themselves. So it's a really powerful thing. But people who have like alien abductions and stuff, Sammy Hagar, pretty cool. He was doing his book tour. He was on Elliot in the Morning in Washington, D.C., which is the local radio station. And he's on there and he's talking about how he was abducted by aliens at Cabo Wabo. Sammy Hagar was abducted by aliens at Cabo Wabo. I never knew. He said, it's the coolest thing, man. They don't take your body. They take your consciousness. It makes you feel like it's your body, but they take your consciousness. But he says you got to be careful because once you get up there, you can't comprehend the reality. The reality is beyond our perceptual reality. So things in their reality don't look like things in our reality. So what happens is your mind produces what it believes it's seeing through your social construct. That's why we see gray or reptilian aliens. It's not that that's what they are. That's what our mind's perceiving that they are through social construct. One way to notice this is if you go to the UFO phenomena, watch the evolution of the UFO phenomena from the 1940s to present day. You notice how they started as flying saucers, then they moved to flying triangles, and then they moved to circular balls. Kind of interesting how you have this, what did we just like, these ones just decided to move away and go away, and now the triangle ones came in for a little while, and then the triangle ones left, and now we have the circle ball ones? Or was it a manifestation of the social construct? As in you're seeing something that is operating within the conscious quantum realm. And I say conscious quantum realm because I do believe that these things have an aspect of consciousness to them, that they're operating there, but they're operating outside of our known space-time. And so you're seeing a phenomena that your brain can't explain, so it goes to the social construct and produces this imagination, visualization, this hallucination of what it believes it is. And that's always going to conform with your social construct. So just one thing out there for everybody is you got to be very careful when you're working with like these types of things and being in that mental world, that understand your mental construct, your social construct, how it operates will pull in imagination from movies and books and experiences and things in your life. And it'll draw that into the experience and it'll show you that as truth when in actuality, you can't perceive quite literally with your eyes what it actually is happening. So, but you have to draw the information out of that. That's some high level shit. I'm sorry.
No, I'm going to go back and I actually clipped it on that part so I can go back because I want people to hear that over and over. You did remind me of something when you were talking about this, unrelated, but whatever. You spawned the thought, and I had brought this up when me, you, and Nina were talking. When I wanted to look at how other civilizations had handled total eclipses. What were some of the things that they thought? I found the Vikings, the Mayans, like all these different civilizations. And they all called it different things. Some of them called it, the dog with multiple heads, but they all felt like something from, space was coming to Earth. And the only way to prevent it from coming was it had to be a massive amount of sound. So you had you had the Vikings that had these special horns that they would even the Viking tribes that didn't get along, like everybody came together and everybody sounded these horns at a specific time to that demon, whatever, that entity from coming. The Mayans would hit their shields and do all this. But essentially the one thing, it was all different ways, but it was to make this massive amount of sound to prevent whatever was coming from coming. Now, there's two ways to look at it. I don't have an engineering degree or sound or any of that stuff, but I do know, when sound shoots out, there's a wave. There's something that you can feel physical. How many of us have ever been at a concert and you're right in front of the speakers, and you can feel the sound, right? And we, bring it back to NASA that's launching these 3 rockets, and what are they going to be doing? But they're going to be, at least one of them is going to be dispersing sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Are we just a civilization that's just using technology, but really just trying to fight it the same way all these other civilizations did for whatever, granted, maybe it's not some 3-horse Greek dog that's coming through space, but are they trying to prevent something good from reaching us, or are they trying to prevent something bad from reaching us? I'm just curious to what your take is on this.
Well, it's a hard thought to process, right? Number one is sound is critically important. This is what is referenced in John when it talks about the logos. In the beginning was logos, or the word. The word is absolutely sound. In Vedic mythology, this is embodied by the sound of Om, the primordial Om, which is the first breath of Brahma, right? That brings the universe into existence through the first breath. Sound is incredibly important. I just actually posted an article a few weeks ago. The most powerful laser ever invented was just invented. And it doesn't use light. It uses phonons, sound. And this thing can be shot from space. And it'll blow shit up. It's a massive directed energy weapon. Sound is powerful. Go ahead.
So I'm glad you're going where you're going with these directed energy weapons and all this, because like I said, NASA, here's another thing a lot of people aren't talking about, but NASA's launching 3 teams of some type of NASA jets that they have that are, they're calling it Chasing the Eclipse. Actually, it's on that same site. If you guys go to science.nasa.gov and they talk about it. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I've seen, and I should have grabbed one of these videos, but there's a lot of people that are putting out information that tomorrow that this total eclipse is going to generate earthquakes. That there's this fault line that's going to activate right around where this X meets on between the 2017 eclipse and this eclipse. And there's this map that's resurfacing recently. And I think a lot of people, if you've been looking into conspiracy stuff, you've probably seen it, but this is map of the United States where most of California is underwater. All of Nevada is underwater.
Do you know whose map that is? It's Edgar Casey's map.
Is it really?
Yeah.
So if you can bring it up, man, I'd love for people to see what I'm talking about. And a lot of people think that this beginning, they're not saying it will happen tomorrow, but that tomorrow is the beginning of something that's going to happen with these faults that's going to change the landscape of Earth, and it's going to reflect what this map looks like.
Hold on, let me grab this one.
All right, here, that's the one.
That's Edgar Casey's map of the United States.
So, and they're saying, that that's what this solar eclipse is going to start. So I'm not saying everybody tomorrow, I'm going to be in a rowboat here in California. I'm not saying that, but they're saying that it's going to start a chain of events that's going to ultimately lead to this being what the face of our planet looks like.
Yep. So it's interesting to think about it like this. I mean, if an earthquake happened in the center point of that X tomorrow, then the governments and the global elite all have a lot of explaining to do, right? And if they just say it's just coincidence, people, there's going to be riots in the street. Like, dude, we're not believing you this time. Come on.
First of all, I'm going to tell you why I ain't going to buy off on coincidence. Let me bring up a patch. We talked about this before.
Yep.
This is the United States Space Command. X marks the spot. Let me go back to that map that I brought up earlier. X marks the spot. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. So they're going to come out and say, oh, man, it caught us by surprise. I'm calling bullshit, man.
I'm calling bullshit, too. I 100% agree with you that, look, people, there is no such thing as coincidences in God's world. Everything has a rhyme and a reason and a purpose under the sun. And that everything that is unfolding right now is unfolding to a specific reason. And I believe that that reason is the Great Awakening. It is the evolution of consciousness, is the evolution of mind, of the evolution of the human being. And that there is a lot of forces on this planet right now that want to stop that evolution. They want to stop you from becoming empowered because they've operated this plantation, the slave matrix for a very, very long time. And they don't want to give up power because, number one, who does want to give up power? Number two, they know what happens to them when they lose power. And that's the scary part for them. And it's exactly what all of us have been talking about for a long time. Here's the key. Nothing can stop what's coming. You can't stop it. It's been set into motion. It's the cyclic nature of the universe. It's how it works. And they know it, and we know it. What we are watching right now, politically, economically, socially around the world, is a rabid dog who has been beat back to a wall and is lashing out one last time before it's put down. That is the truth in the matter, that they are pulling out all exhaust that they can possibly do. Donald Trump said it a few months ago. 2024 is the final battle. After this point in time, we pick up the pieces and we move on. And we're seeing global structures collapse right in front of us that have been in place for hundreds of years, thousands of years. I mean, think about just the European monarchies and how they are just like bleeding dry of everything. It's failing. ESG collapsing throughout the entire United States. The World Economic Forum's power and reach completely exposed. The World Health Organization just completely beat down to where they have to go out there and change the definitions of their World Health Organization pandemic treaty to agreement because too many Americans stepped forth and said, well, president can't enter into that because guess what? Senate needs to approve treaties. So they changed it to an agreement. And they think that's going to make a difference. I mean, I don't think the WHO or the UN understands what happens if blue helmets just decided to come into the United States of America. My thoughts is they're already here. They came over the border, millions of them. And the moment that they put on those blue helmets, they're giving us a nice blue target. And good luck with that because you're going to find Americans coming together like you've never thought before. You know, I tend to look at various different parallels and I'm, deviating a little bit, but I think this is what people need to hear out there. I got some friends who run with some motorcycle gangs. Okay? The big ones. And they've all said that if shit hits the fan, they know where they're going. And they're going to go to politicians' houses. They're going to Washington, D.C. And they're going to work together. Because one thing I don't think the deep state and the cabal understand is that criminal organizations that have been around and established themselves for a very, very long time are now at threat because of what's happening. The Bloods and the Crips will unite and rise up against corrupt governments because they're going to lose their power if they don't. Okay? And we're talking about bad dudes. Okay?
It's funny you say that, Josh. Let me interrupt here. Remember back to the conversation in 2012 and the Aztec calendar? Here it is, the end of times. And me and my partners were working. And one of my partners, he knows I messed around a little bit with conspiracy, but that was my brother's thing. My little brother's like, most of the time I was like, get away with me not with that nonsense. You guys are all crazy, right? I was one of those guys. But he asked me, well, how would we know if it's the end times? And I said, when we're fighting shoulder to shoulder with the Mongols and the Hells Angels and the Bloods and the Crips, that's when you know it's end times. When we realize we're on the same team, I don't care what the hell you were doing yesterday, sign of end times right there, or at least a sign of them wanting end times, and the human race is going to fight, when it comes down to it. Because here's a pretty cool phenomenon, and I saw this right around not too long after January 6th. Because it was when the Spaces was still in its beta form. Only certain people could host them. And we're in this space, and back then they were only get up to like 200, 300 people in these spaces. And this, we're in there, and there's, people that are staunch left and staunch right, because, we're all still learning that it's the establishment. And it's cutthroat, the pressure's on. And then a foreigner comes in, and the foreigner just starts bashing one side of the Americans that the other side was bashing. And what did you see? The same ones that were just attacking each other for different political views. Mm-hmm. Everybody turned and put sights on that dude and just started bombing on him. And I witnessed it in real time, something of small magnitude, but it's still a representation of how we react as patriots. Yep. That we can bash each other, but when someone comes and tries to throw trash in our house, there's going to be an ass whooping that comes with that.
That's it. One of the things that I've been trying to do is be more respectful of the complaints that the left has. And if you noticed, they're complaining about the same stuff we are. The only difference is the solution, right? Now, many in the Marxist ideology, we want Marxism, we want socialism, we want communism. And the thing that you have to explain to them is not why socialism is bad or why communism is bad, because to them, that doesn't matter. And here's the thing. In a perfect world, I guarantee you socialism and communism would probably be a great thing. But guess what? We don't live in a perfect world. The reason capitalism is the best political and monetary, or why a Republican capitalism are the best political and monetary ideologies to move forward with, is because they manage corruption the best. And I want people to really allow that to settle in. Is in socialism and communism, you have a centralization of the power, the labor within the people, the power within the government, right? Depending on which one you're going for. But it becomes a lot easier for corrupt and power-hungry people to centralize that power and take over control, which we've seen in the past. In the sense of a republic and capitalism, that becomes incredibly difficult. It takes a very, very long time for corruption and greed to take hold and really control that organization. We're at that point now, don't get me wrong, but it's the difference between a centralized and a decentralized blockchain for anybody who's into that type of stuff. But the plights of the left, what they're complaining about, it's the same stuff we're complaining about, people. Well, they're saying we need more social programs. And you're saying, like, well, go out and get a fucking job. Well, here's the thing, is why are we both complaining about healthcare? The thing is we should be complaining about the companies putting poison in our food and the companies poisoning the soil and the water and the air. We should be complaining about the amount of chemicals that are being pumped into the atmosphere and these corporations that just feed us absolute poison, because that's what's making us sick. Back in the 1950s and 60s, our parents didn't look at their paycheck and say, oh man, I need $200 for health care. Guess what? They didn't have fucking health care. They had family doctors who they paid when they had to go see them once in a blue frickin' moon because they were healthy. The problem isn't whether you have health care or social health care or if you have private or government ran. The question is why are people fucking sick?
Just go, everybody go on the devil's Google later today, before you call it a night, and search out United States beaches, or just put California beaches, 1950s, and then do California beaches today.
No fat.
And aside from the difference in bathing suits, you're going to be hard pressed to find a fat person in those old photos. Like the entire beach, everybody looks healthy.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Well, they didn't have health insurance.
They didn't have health insurance. And you also didn't have Bill Gates putting chemicals in the fruits and vegetables there, if you guys aren't aware of that. I want to bring us to, and I'm going to play this in, I'll do it in double speed. It's a CERN video, and I'm going to play it without audio so we can keep talking, and I'll have it on the sidebar so people can watch, because the video is like 6 minutes. I don't know if I'll play the whole thing, but this is the CERN opening ceremony, because I want to make sure we cover a little bit of CERN and your thoughts on this. Well, first, what is CERN, so people can look at it. So from what you know of, what is CERN, Josh, and what have you heard is its purpose? And while Josh is talking, you guys, on the side, and it's going to be playing at double speed, so people aren't really moving that fast, you're going to see a short clip or multiple clips from the CERN's opening ceremonies, and I'll give it to you, brother.
Yeah, it's the Large Hadron Collider. So basically what it is it's a high-energy particle accelerator. They take various different particles, protons, and they spin them around at the speed of light around a big magnetic circle, and then they crash them into each other to see what they're going to create. Now, they say high energy, and it takes a lot of high energy to get things going to 98, 93% the speed of light, especially a small little particle. And that's why it becomes high energy. And the amount of the reactions that these things create isn't necessarily really high energy. High density and high energy, a little bit different of context here. The idea, if you guys ever watch TV on old CRT screen TVs, these things had what was known as a cathode ray tube, and it would shoot electrons at a phosphorus screen, and then the phosphorus screen would glow and produce a picture. And then you had regular black and white, and you could basically create a program that do what's called a raster, and it would basically map out a picture on a phosphorus screen, and that's how early TV operated. Well, that electron gun that's shooting those electrons is the same thing that's basically used within these Large Hadron Colliders. And there's a lot of various different purposes they had for them. Microwaves work very much the same way, as they oscillate these electrons into a cavity, they spin them around, and then they throw them into these other resonant cavities that produce this outpouring of microwaves, and that's how your microwave oven works. There's another thing called the klystron, which does the same thing with the oscillation of crystals. But a Large Hadron Collider is a way for us to look into the quantum world and mathematically predict how the interaction of two particles is going to break down. And when you break down these particles, you should see experimental evidence of your predictions, in the sense of the Higgs field, the boson field, or of mesons and quarks and gluons and all these other quantum particles. When you smash two rocks together, you should see smaller components of those rocks, right? You should see the molecules that come out of the rocks. And that's the whole idea behind it. There's been a lot of conspiracy theories, especially because of videos like this, that CERN is actually creating interdimensional portals, creating black holes. Well, actually, that's true. They did create a black hole. They created a micro black hole quite a few years ago and sustained it for milliseconds. We're not able to sustain it. They've actually created antimatter, and they hold the antimatter in various different facilities. I believe the military actually owns one of these. I would say 100% that what CERN is doing needs to stop, because I don't trust these people, especially with ceremonies like this. These are just pagan ceremonies, various different rituals. You have the Shakti rituals that they did outside. These are... we can look at some of these as satanic. We can look at some of these as not satanic, whatever. I don't know. I'm not a professional on these types of rituals. I've seen ones that look really evil and satanic. I've seen ones that just kind of like fall festivals and so the birth of fertility and all this stuff, right? At the end of the day, the science that they're doing there is kind of really cool, but it makes you question what they're really doing. For instance, tomorrow they are turning on CERN, and they are going to be doing high particle collisions at very, very high energy to produce dark matter. Tomorrow. At the same time that 3 rockets are going into the ionosphere and checking for electrical perturbations that occur when light leaves momentarily and then comes back 3 minutes later. I don't know about you, but that's just odd that all of that is happening at the same time, especially when Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, predicted that a solar eclipse is a time when souls come to the earth because the earth's aura is blocked by the moon and souls can finally enter into the earth. And then we have Apep, which is the Egyptian god, also known as the Eater of Souls. That is one of the rockets that are being fired. And at the same time, CERN, which is known for producing portals in the conspiracy world, is firing up. When you put those damn things together, it doesn't seem much like a conspiracy anymore. It sounds like they're trying to produce soulless human beings. It sounds like they're trying to sacrifice souls, quite literally, entrap them, and produce soulless human beings. Now, that's interesting because do you remember a conspiracy theorist by the name of Max Spires?
No, I don't remember.
So he was pretty far out there. He talked about a lot of like, he was like, I love Carrie Cassidy, but he's like Carrie Cassidy. He just throws everything together into one bunch and like, this is it. And, but he talked about how this evil, dark evil in the world is what they want to do is enslave man's soul. And that they figured out a way through the occult, through dark magic, to open portals to capture man's soul. Now, he was saying this back in 2018. Now, he started associating that with the human trafficking and child pedophilia rings, Epstein and all that. And the night before, he called his mother and said, I got a really bad feeling. This isn't good. If something happens to me, please investigate. The next day, he died at a friend's house.
Wow.
And he was vomiting black goo. And they said he died of a heroin overdose.
I've never seen that in a heroin.
Oh, yeah. Check out Max Spires. It's weird. But it was, he started investigating the whole Pizzagate stuff and associated it with the soul stealers. So when you add that into what's potentially happening here in ceremonial magic, dude, it makes a lot of sense. And you know what? You know what can defeat that? Is the good of your heart.
Yep.
Is the alignment of your intention. Is the direction of your mind. Is the focus of who you and what you are, the good within you. That's what can stop and change that. And see, that's what they don't want. Now, we talked about this before, the AI component. We don't have to get into the AI component, but we'll get into is just, there's something out there called VMAT2, VMAT. Go ahead.
Pause that real quick, because I want to do that. And I don't mind covering the AI if you want to dump into that. But before we go off from this part of CERN, something I just learned today, and I did not know, was I was like, well, CERN, that's all the way out there in Sweden, right?
Switzerland, Geneva.
Or Switzerland, thank you. And then I was like, then I see Boone Cutler put out a post today. And I'm going to bring that up on the screen. And I was just like, bro, why you got to break my heart, Boone? And it says, did you know, and he tags CERN, has a location in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Oak Ridge Leadership Computing Facility, 1 Bethel Valley Road, puts the P.O. Box address. Look into Oak Ridge, Tennessee's history and what it's known for. And he puts these links in there, which I have up for you guys. And like I said, after the show, all these links will be down in the description for you guys.
National Laboratories.
Alice, this is what one of the links is. A large ion collider experiment at CERN. And I'll just read it real briefly, this first paragraph. From the ALICE website, and has the website there, ALICE is the acronym for a Large Ion Collider Experiment, one of the largest experiments in the world devoted to research in the physics of matter at an infinitely small scale, hosted at CERN, the European Laboratory for Nuclear Research. This project involves an international collaboration of more than 1,500 physicists, engineers, and technicians, including around 350 graduate students from 154 physics institutes in 37 countries around the world. The ALICE experiment is going in search of answers to fundamental questions using the extraordinary tools provided by the LHC. What happens to matter when it's heated to 100,000 times the temperature of the center of the sun? Why do protons and neutrons weigh 100 times more than the quarks they are made of? And then can quarks inside the protons and neutrons be freed? And then as CADES operates a tier 2 ALICE, and then I'll just click on the next one real quick so you guys can take a look at it. And it shows 7 years ago picture, 8 years ago picture of these things going on. So this isn't just out there on the other side of the planet. We got one right here in our own country.
Yeah. And the military has a secret one in Texas. They built it in the 1990s and then scrapped the project and buried it right next to an underground military facility.
What part of Texas are we talking here?
I think it's near San Antonio. Hold on.
The only reason I was curious is because for those that don't know, where this eclipse enters the United States, it's going to go, through Mazatlan in Mexico. But the first place it's going to hit the United States just happens to be Eagle Pass. And if you're like, Alpha, why does Eagle Pass sound familiar? Well, because it's been in the news lately because of all the stuff we're having at the border. You have Abbott that said he wants to build an army base that's right there at Eagle Pass. And then shortly after this eclipse passes over Eagle Pass, it's going to pass over another little area known as Uvalde. Well, Alpha, why does that sound familiar? Well, because that's where we had that mass casualty incident of the shooting of the kids with the Border Patrol agent that went in.
Let me ask you this. Does it pass over Dallas?
Let me bring it up here. Give me 1 second. I'll bring that screen back up. Let me go here.
Oh, yeah, dude, guess what? So it's in Waxahachie, Texas. So it was outside of Waxahachie, Texas. It was a collider that was supposed to be built there instead of CERN. But why build one when you can build two at the price of one, right? And so they built it. They dug all the holes. They did everything, and then they buried it. I'm telling you, it's there. But it's in Waxahachie, Texas, which is just a little south of Dallas.
Well, and yep, Dallas is right on the center part where it goes. Oops, went a little too fast there.
Yep.
So you got Dallas, Austin, San Antonio. This is where you have Mazatlan, Durango.
And then it doesn't pass almost, so it's close to Oak Ridge, Tennessee. But yeah, this is really just so interesting, man. I mean, how fascinating is all this?
Well, the other thing, before we go back to the topic you were going to cover here, we talked about that town of Rapture that's at the X marks a spot here, right, on our pirate map. But the other thing I found really interesting is there's a lot of Egyptian named cities that surround the township of Rapture. And it just goes back to, the conversation we had at the beginning of this, when we're talking about APEP and all that stuff. So, hey, it is what it is. They've known it for a long time. I'm not worried one bit about tomorrow. My energy's good. I'm going to be out there soaking this stuff up. I'm going to be barbecuing. Like it's going to be a good time. I'm not going to live in fear. I'm not going to give them that power of my manifestation. But go ahead and continue with what you were going to say.
Well, it's also interesting that there's 18 places named Rome in the United States of America, and they're all interconnected by the same roadway systems. All roads lead to Rome. Just an FYI. But what I was going to say is there was something known as SRI, so Stanford Research Initiative. This was funded by the CIA. They did a lot of different work in the 1970s and the 1980s to discover various different types of weapons for the Star Wars program in the 1980s, as well as research on consciousness. A few of the people that worked in there developed various programs known as remote viewing, being one of them. Uri Geller, Hal Puthoff, Russell Targ, these guys worked in that program. So Dean Radin, who is the chairman of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, Dr. Dean Radin, he's been all over the whole coast to coast world, spiritual world for a long time. He is a true, real scientist who does real scientist work. He was on my show and he was talking about the study that they did at SRI, and that what they discovered is that people who have a devout faith in God, people who have mystical experiences or psychic abilities, they all have one thing in common. They have a gene that's activated in their body called VMAT2. And the interesting thing they found is that people who are atheists, sociopaths, don't have the gene active. So you remember that like 2011 video where everybody's saying it's Bill Gates and the CIA, and he's like, we figured out a way to shut off the genes. I don't believe that that's fake. I don't know if it's Bill Gates, but I don't think that that's fake because they've been looking for a way to turn off that gene specifically because people who have that gene turned off have this like disconnection from nature and God. What's interesting is the VMAT2 gene is upregulated by what's called ACE2 receptors.
Oh, smokes, bro. Oh, I see where this is going.
So ACE2 receptors are what initiate the regulation of that gene. And if you had something that downregulated ACE2 receptors, that gene doesn't have the ability to be active. How many people that you know got the shot that felt disconnected from nature or God or faith, lost their psychic connectivity or intuition? And the reason is because the spike protein attacks the ACE2 receptor, whether it's the jab or whether it's the actual virus, attacks the ACE2 receptors, producing a downregulation of that. Now, I have other theories in place as well. That, do you remember? So I've talked about this before, and this is one of the pieces of research that I absolutely am fascinated that I was able to uncover. But nobody like looks at this as like, wait, what the fuck did you just say? Like, you remember those emails from Hillary Clinton that nobody talks about?
Right.
What was in them?
That's some wicked stuff, bro.
Some wicked stuff, right?
Especially when you got into the John Podesta ones.
Well, that stuff is different. Charles McCullough III was the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community. He testified in front of the House Intelligence Committee. Chavez was the chairman at the time, back in 2016. When he was testifying, he was asked, what was in Hillary Clinton's missing emails? Because the intelligence community had actually seen them. And he goes on to say, sir, I can't tell you. That's classified. And he goes, what do you mean? I'm the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Do we need to go to a skip? I have the highest security clearance in our government. He goes, it doesn't matter. I can't tell you. There's special access programs. He goes, these are the most highly classified secrets of our government. I can't tell you what's in them. I'm the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community, and they wouldn't even give them to me. They only gave me summary briefings. And then Chavez is like, wait a minute. You're telling me that I can't find out and you can't find out what's in these projects, but Hillary Clinton knew, and these were the emails that somehow got out of the hands of our national security? He's like, yeah. Now, we know from the Horowitz report that Hillary Clinton's personal email server had metadata. And inside this metadata, there was a script that whenever she replied or forwarded an email, it would send it to her Secretary of State email server at the SOS. In that script, it would also send a draft copy to her Gmail account. The Gmail account just happened to be registered to a company that was a Chinese company. And the IP address of accessibility, when you go and look at the IP login access of that Gmail account, was in China, geolocated in China. Now, the interesting thing is the only emails that Hillary Clinton was replying and forwarding to were the specific special access program emails. By the way, she was not even supposed to be on the email thread in the first place. This is all explained by Inspector General McCullough. Okay? So we see that Hillary Clinton is not supposed to be on these email threads. They're coming in. She's forwarding and replying to them. They're going to a Gmail draft folder, which China is now accessing. And within a 10-year span, China advances their military advancement to the point where we're at. I wonder how they did that. Because we were feeding them some type of military information from special access programs. The question is what military information was it? What if I told you we know? We know what that was. And the reason we know, when Barack Obama in 2008 came in, he created two different programs with China, educational exchange programs. One is like the 1,000 Talents program and a few others. Well, this allowed American universities to go over to China and exchange professors and, for American government to go out there and fund Chinese colleges. And then for China to come over here and fund the United States colleges and fund United States professors to come over to China. Within Donald Trump's first 2 years, they opened an investigation. Firstly, what they did is they shut down those programs completely altogether. Then 32 professors were arrested for tax evasion. Every single one of the professors were sent over to China. Now, here's where the interesting part comes in, the little sleuthville that I go in there with my investigative journalism, is these 32 professors, number one, were all charged with tax evasion. Number two, they were brought over to China to various different universities. Number three, they all had National Science Foundation, DOD, DOE, DARPA, or NASA grants that were funding their research. So you ask yourself, what was in those emails that Hillary Clinton was sending to China? It was the university and the professor who were getting the grant for the special access program to reverse engineer alien technology. They send that into the university so they can begin reverse engineering and get it out into manufacturing, get it out into the world cleanly without saying it was reverse engineered. These professors begin working on these projects. China brings them over, gets them into a room, blackmails them, honeypots them, puts a 10-year-old in there, a gun in their hand. They completely blackmail them, get all that information from them. China gets to research, begins their own process of development. Trump finds out, the military finds out. This is what the whole Q thing was about. This is what all of this stuff was about, was stolen military secrets. I mean, there was various different nuclear accidents that happened from 2006, 2007, 2008. You know, Alpha, if I told you that a B-2 bomber was loaded with live nuclear warheads and flew halfway across the United States before anybody realized it, would you believe that? That doesn't fucking happen. The chain of custody to activate a nuke, let alone get it onto a bird, the chain of custody for that to happen is from the CO of the base, double key solution, coming out of a vault locker with 5 different people signing off with eyes on. That doesn't happen. But it did in 2008. Or did it? Was that just a cover-up of something else? 2007, Mark 12 ICBM electrical fuses. These are the fuses that make ICBMs go boom. Classified technology. Were shipped from Minot, North Dakota to the Defense Logistics Agency in Utah. The 4 boxes that came in were mislabeled as helicopter batteries. Don't know how you do that. Thrown onto the shelves with thousands of boxes of helicopter batteries. Those 4 same boxes get put on a plane and shipped over to Taiwan. Just those 4 boxes.
Imagine that.
Taiwan's intelligence agency just happened to interdict those 4 boxes of helicopter batteries as they're on their way over to China. And they came back and said, hey, these aren't helicopter batteries. These are ICBM electrical fuses. Go figure. Well, 10 general officers lost their positions and were forced to resign or were demoted. One of the general officers at the Defense Logistics Agency, the head of the Defense Logistics Agency, that was forced into retirement from that, ended up getting a tits job with the military-industrial complex. His name was Major General Kevin Sullivan. Now, that name might be like, wait, hold on a second. I've heard this name before. Well, he adopted a few kids afterwards. One of them's name was Jonathan Sullivan. Goes by the moniker Jaden X, who happened to film
January
all of
6th.
January 6th. Dude, no freaking coincidences at all. All these people work together, all legacy, all keep it in the family. Okay.
Speaking of no coincidences, and you brought up Q first. so I'm gonna go there, and I'm gonna throw a little picture up on the screen of, we all heard about The Simpsons, identifying that Trump was going to run for president before he did, the famous elevator thing. Episode 17.
That's pretty crazy.
I'm telling you, man.
Yeah, go ahead.
We need to start wrapping it up here.
Yeah, okay.
I want to cover some fun stuff, and like I said, we'll end on a positive note. If I know we've covered a lot, but is there anything specifically with regards to this event tomorrow that we didn't cover, or that we didn't cover thoroughly, that you want to make sure is addressed?
what happens after tomorrow is I want everybody to look and understand that tomorrow is like day one. It's the new beginning of the new year, of the new age, of the new cycle of mankind. Go in tomorrow with positivity and understanding, knowing that we've defeated this evil on this planet, even if there's still battles waging on. Go into understanding that they can't falter your position. That as much bullshit and psychological warfare that they use against you, as many fear tactics and propaganda they push at you, we are now the media. They have lost control of the most important aspect of the multi-domain battlefield, and that is information. They no longer control information, and that scares them to their core because they can no longer control you. But that's a key component to understand, that you have to understand yourself. In order to control what is real and what's not real, the bullshit from the non-bullshit, you have to have a high level of discernment. There's a motto we have at the Red Pill Project, and it's really simple. Never believe anything anybody tells you, no matter who they are or what authority they possess or profess, whether it's Alpha, myself, Donald Trump, your pastor, the Pope. I don't give a shit unless you can prove it through your own research, your own inquiry, through your own volition, and through your own investigation. And what that means is not just going out and validating what someone said. Hey, they went to this document and said the government's corrupt. And I go out to that, I see the same document, it says the government's corrupt. Take everything down to the closest that you can get to the foundational source that you can get to it. If it's something scientific, study it inside and out and try to understand it in every aspect, from the theoretical down to the mathematical. You can't just have an overview understanding of certain things and say, hey, look, this fits into the puzzle because of A or B or C. We can't just accept what other people say simply because they say it. We have to go out there and validate it for ourselves. And then from there, what you learn is you learn how to trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, you learn how to know yourself. And when you know yourself, and this is the most beautiful thing in the world, Alpha, I can't know Alpha. I can't get inside his mind, know his thoughts, feel his feelings. I can only know Alpha to the degree of which I know myself. Because when Alpha communicates with me, there's certain things in me that oscillate and resonate and say, I like this guy. He's good. He buys me Bud Lights and puts pretty little flags in it, right? Real story. But the thing is I can only know Alpha as well as I know myself. Now, transition to that to God. You can only know and have a relationship with God as well as you know and have a relationship with yourself. And that's the truth of the matter of this existence, that you have to know yourself, you have to master yourself, and you have to work yourself to that high level and degree of what I call optimization. And so don't stop and look at tomorrow as day one to move that right up and get yourself to where you've always wanted to be. No more, oh, poor me. No more victim mentality. Fuck that. It's time to rock and roll. The only way that we defeat these people is to better ourselves.
Absolutely 100%. And you reminded me of one more thing I want to ask you. So I'm going to tell you what it is. Then we're going to break to 2 quick commercials. Give Josh some time to formulate a response to this in case he didn't think about it. But one thing I did hear, and we didn't touch on, this is somewhat biblical amongst other things, but that tomorrow at this X, and the reason we have a large presence of military at this X is because that's where the Nephilim are going to be coming from. So we're going to break the 2 quick commercials, you guys. When we come back, we'll get Josh's response to that. We'll wrap up this show. So see you in just a moment.
When I started MyPillow, it was just a problem solution, one product company. Well, since then, with the help of my dedicated employees, we now have hundreds of products, some you might not even know about. To get the word out, we're having a $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-use MyPillows, $25. MyPillow sandals, $25. And for the first time ever, our 6-pack towel sets, you guessed it, just $25. Our brand new 4-pack dish towels, $25. And I've never done this before. Premium My Pillows with all new Giza fabric, any size, any loft level, even king size for only $25. And there's so much more. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code for our $25 extravaganza. Order $75 and over. Your entire order ships absolutely free.
President's former national security advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, pleading guilty today to lying to the FBI.
Flynn knew exactly how the system worked. He knew exactly what the intel world had been up to. He understood its funding. They had to get rid of Flynn.
There was a moment where I just felt like I was drowning. So I'm in there with these other political appointees. They're all supposed to go in there and tell what they believe to be the truth. What they did was they took my assessment and they wanted me to change it. And I was like, I'm not changing it.
He was, by definition, the most dangerous possible person for Donald Trump to hire.
President Obama said, but I do have one specific recommendation. Stay away from Michael Flynn. He's bad news.
Over time, instead of being pounded down below the surface of the ocean, we started to fight. I'm now above the surface.
So you guys had mypillow.com promo code alpha. Josh, do you have anything set up with Lindell?
I do.
What's your promo code for that?
RPP.
If you guys are from Josh's place or you just want to share the wealth, make sure when you go there, buy some towels, use promo code alpha, buy some pillows. You are
buy $25.
Exactly. Use promo code RPP there. I see the conversation in the chat with regards to General Flynn. You guys know my position on it. We're not going to go there. But what I will say, depending what stance you have, whether you're in support of him, whether you see him as opposition, I would challenge you to see the movie. See the movie and see if it changes your perspective. And I'll leave that to that. So out of all the people that I heard this from, Josh, is my father. My father tells me that he hears, so, I mean, this goes with, we were raised Roman Catholic, not just Catholic, Roman Catholic, right? And one of the things that he had heard, tracking some talks from rabbis, talks, from the churches, different scuttlebutt, was that there's going to be like these 3 days of darkness. And that these Nephilim are going to be there. And it's to the point, it almost kind of reminds me of Passover, where you're not supposed to answer your door and all this stuff because it's going to sound like your family's voices are there calling to you, but it's not. I mean, it's really it's the fear porn stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'm just curious if you've heard anything around that.
I have not. I mean, I probably content on my channel because we have a few different shows on there. We have Beyond the Bible. I know they talk about this. Unrestricted warfare. I know James has had a few people on about that. But I tend to stick. I tend not to go down the religious route. And the reason I say that is because I think we're all speaking a different language, but talking about the same thing. Right? I don't think it matters whether you're coming from a scientific perspective, a religious perspective, an ideological perspective. I think that we're all describing the same thing through different languages. And I tend to stick with the languages I can speak. And so the Nephilim, 90 generations of inservitude being released, all this stuff. Interesting enough that Max Spires, when he talked about this, he claimed that they were opening portals to release the 72 creation demons, which would be the same as the Nephilim. And that's what they were using CERN for, and that they would have to produce a mass event to produce the amount of power needed to do that while the portal was open. So there's theories out there. I'll believe it when I see it. And you know what? If 72 creation demons or the Nephilim all come back, lock and load. We'll see if they can dodge 556. If they can, shit. Right? At least my soul's going to heaven.
That's what I'm saying. It's just like, hey, It doesn't matter. I win regardless, because even if you manage to take me out, I'm going right back to my creator, and what better place to be. Josh, tell us a little bit about redpills.tv for my audience that hasn't seen you before. I mean, we've grown a lot since the last time you've been here.
Yeah.
What kind of content's there, man? If people go to redpills.tv, what are they going to find?
So we have a few different shows on there. We have the Naturally Inspired podcast, which is a radio show done by Tammy Cuthbert Garcia. She talks to a lot of different medical doctors, health professionals, brings them on and discusses various aspects of health. So we have a health show that airs almost probably every other day. The radio show is daily, but we get the uploads and stuff. Unrestricted Warfare, which is, anybody remembers the old channel that used to be on AMP with James Grunvig. He had a show there. He's now doing it on Red Pill Project, eventually going to be Decentralized Media. But that is the kind of a high level perspective from various different people on what's unfolding, more of a Q tone to it, the Q world tone to it, military is in control type of aspect. Unrestricted Warfare, that's a show there. We have Beyond the Bible, which is a religious show about Revelations, and it's a certain perspective on that. That airs weekly. There's 3 or 4 shows weekly. Then we have the Daily Dose, which is my show. That's Monday through Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that is what I call the unfolding global conspiracy. We look at the aspect of the multi-headed Hydra with various different factions all battling it out, the War of the Roses, that are instigating what I call the Firestorm event. This is social, cultural, political, and economic destabilization, the attacks on supply chain and infrastructure leading to global economic collapse in World War III, which we've been predicting since November of 2020, which we're seeing unfold all the time. And then on Friday nights, I do Conversations on the Fringe, which really talks about these types of topics, aliens, ghosts. I tell a lot of my UFO stories from the military, from my life. I have various different guests on, David Icke, Dean Reid, a whole bunch of different people. And so we have a lot of fun. We have a lot of great discussions, a lot of great shows. And so more than welcome if people want to go check that out.
And this is what I'll say to the audience, especially if you're my people that are here for this show. Before I ever had a podcast, this guy right over here is and his team, I was watching them. I was doing my canine work, especially those late night conversations you guys would have, take it to the YouTube or the Zoom thing that was going on. Not only are you going to get great information and different perspectives, but Josh and his team does a great job of delivering it in an entertainment fashion as well. Kind of like you guys saw tonight. And trust me, we will have more of Josh in the future. I call this man the walking encyclopedia. And if you started this show from the beginning, now you know why. So before we call this night done, we had a really generous Rumble rant that came in earlier. I want to make sure I didn't forget. Breadmaker62 with a $50 Rumble rant. Thanks to both of you. I've learned so much tonight. So am I. And I was sitting next to this guy. So if you joined late at the beginning of the show, I kind of asked everybody, what do you think tomorrow's going to look like? Is it going to be, the rapture biblical? Is it going to be independent? Well, let me bring it up. Is it going to be this? Are we looking at the rapture, some biblical coming tomorrow? Is it going to be this? Independence Day. We're going to see, Project Bluebeam and some aliens. Is this really a cover up for an asteroid that's going to get in the way of the sun? And we're looking at Armageddon, except this time we don't have Bruce Willis to save our ass. Are we looking at CERN opening up a portal, and we're looking at the demons and Nephilim coming? Are we going zombies? Because zombies is just always fun, right? Or is it just going to be a nothing burger, and we're looking at the Y2K dud? Do us a solid. If you're in the live chat, if you're in the comments, let us know if you change positions, if you have the same position and what that is. And with that, any final words from you, Josh? And I said we started off with a funny. We're going to end with a funny. Once again, down in the description, you guys, all the links to find Josh, to follow him on social media, to get to his website. Same thing to support my sponsors. But I'll give you the final word. And once you're done with that, brother, I will play our funny on the way out.
Never believe anything anybody tells you, man. Use your own discernment, people. Keep your chins up and understand that good will always prevail, because it is good is within the hearts of men and within the minds of men. And tomorrow, when you go out there and you watch the solar eclipse, hold that love of God and family and and humanity in your heart, and nothing will ever defeat your soul. Just know that. To the funnies.
To the funnies. Simplify, everybody.
I'm sorry, but heaven isn't heaven without my family in it.
What do you want, Homer?
Just send me back to Earth and put off this whole rapture hoop-de-doo for another couple of years or so.
But it's already started. To do what you're asking, I'd have to turn back time.
Superman did it!
Fine, Mr. Smarty Pants. I will undo the apocalypse.
Thanks. Listen, could you do me one more favor?
You want me to help you with your alcoholism?
No, I'm in a good place with that.
Why don't you just take these pamphlets?
Yeah, I'll definitely read those later. Now listen, if you could just see your way clear to...
Very well. Deus ex machina!
Oh, it was all just a dream. What are these wings? Oh, it's just a seagull stuck in my back.